putting this together so that we're able to be accommodated in here. But what it does mean is that we haven't got any big screens, so if people need to move so that they're able to look at a laptop so that they can follow the papers, then please do that now. But it looks like most people have got laptops and they're able to go on and see the papers that are published on the council website. Thank you very much. So Matt and Rachel are both with it. They're going to talk to us about the youth strategy, and there's been a suggestion that actually we move the agendas around a little bit, but I'll speak to that when we come to it. So toilets are just to our right. If people need to go to the toilet, there isn't a fire alarm planned. So if there is a drill, we will need to leave. The doors, our nearest one is just over here to the left. But Matt has told us what happens if there is a fire drill, and I'm going to repeat it. And if I get any of it wrong, Matt, and do tell me, because it sounds quite strange. So if there is a fire drill when the young people are in here, because the idea is that we get between 250 and 300 young people when it's up and running and everybody's safe and they feel that they're coming in, 250 to 300 young people here on any one evening, not so much during the day because they'll be at school, but in the evening times. And if there is a fire, all the doors apparently open immediately to enable young people to either get out into the open space or out, basically out of the building if they're in a particular space where they can get out immediately from that room they're in. But also there are fire curtains that start to come down quite slowly, that obviously is there to protect the building. So if there is a fire alarm, that will happen, just warning people. So don't put your heads under it or anything, but it's quite slow, so don't smack anybody over the face, so that's quite good. But it's good, I've never heard of such things, but it's a good piece of kit, I suppose, to protect what is a fabulous new space in South Bristol for the young people that are from Friday week will be able to start to use it. So thank you very much for accommodating us, and really look forward to seeing it once it's up and running and everybody's started. So I'm going to go to my left. I'll ask committee members to introduce themselves, and then officers, if you just say your name and your role when you first start to speak to committee. Okay.
Ashley Ferrari, Policy Committee Officer.
Andrew Varney, Councillor for Brislington West.
Kelly Freeman, Councillor for Bedminster. Shuri Jeffrey, Councillor for Lawrence Hill.
Tim Rippington, Councillor from Brislington East. I'm standing in for Katya.
Sue Collar, Councillor for Bishopsworth. Kerry Bells, Councillor for Parkson.
Okay, thank you very much. And as Councillor Rippington said, we've had one apologies from Katya Hunchen and the Vice Chair, so Tim Rippington is standing in for her. Yasin Mohammed he said he's going to try and get it for 5 o'clock. He's not quite with us yet, but hopefully he will join us very shortly. And Councillor Glandris sent apologies earlier on this morning. Councillor Yasin Mohammed he's doing some preparation for his what is expected to be his next role. And I think he had to. Yeah, so that's probably in City Hall, which is maybe why it's taking a while for him to come down here. Okay, thank you very much. So item number 3 is declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations that they feel that they need to declare to us?
Yeah, just on the off chance, I want to declare that I'm actually a
trustee.
Trustee, that's the one. I'm a trustee. Just in case there's any conflict.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thanks very much. So item number 4 then is the minutes of the previous meeting that was held on March the 5th. Can I have a seconder to say that it was a correct record of what happened? Have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey seconded. Are you content with the minutes, committee? Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. And then we get on to agenda item number 5, which is the chair's announcements. So I've got a question that I'd like to put to the committee members about our August, the date in our August committee. There's been a suggestion that maybe we move it to the first week in September for what are relatively reasons really, about holidays and childcare and schools and all the rest of it. So we're Democratic Services are looking to see whether it's possible, because you know how tight these calendar meetings can be, but have a think about it yourselves, and let myself or Ashley know if there's a major issue with it being moved into the first week or the early September, rather than it be in August. Andrew?
Chair, will we keep the agenda briefing date the same date, which is going 6th of August? Will that change as well?
Yeah, well, 3 weeks. I mean, it's 3 weeks is before. Probably this time round. I mean, I think the suggestion is that we don't have a committee meeting in August, and that we permanently move it into the beginning of September.
It's we can still get the papers ready, I think. And try and avoid too much change.
Yeah, this time round. But then, yeah. So if anybody has any particular issues as to why that would be difficult for them, if you let us know. But that's kind of the direction of travel really for that August meeting. Thank you. The second announcement that I wanted to update people on was the what we've been doing around the white paper and the SEND reforms. So as a council, we wanted to have some briefings with different stakeholders. So there's been one with the Senkos were invited to. There was a separate one for all head teachers, and there was a separate one for governors and members of trustees, really, on multi-academy trusts. And then next Wednesday is the briefing for the whole all councillor briefing about the white paper and the SEND reforms. And the idea being is that the council, the response to that paper for the council takes a wider view, but that in no way prevents any individual, any party, any organisation from also contributing into that white paper about what their perspective might be from their individual organisation or their personal perspective on what those reforms are saying.
Chair,
Yeah.
just checking the all-member briefing next Wednesday will be recorded. So unfortunately I'm away.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it will be recorded. Yeah. Okay. So that takes us. Thank you very much. That takes us on to agenda item number 6. So we have 4 questions and 2 statements. Both of the statements and the questions have been published on the public forum for the website, and the answers have also been published there. There was an indication that one person was going to come to speak, but I can see that they're not here. Is there anybody, I'm looking at who's in the public gallery really, that have put submitted questions or statements? No. Okay, so they're there. They're in the public domain. The public forum is there for people to read as they wish to. I would also now, would you like to change the order of the agenda so that we move the Bristol Futures to after. Yeah, so we do the corporate risk, we do the transformation update, and then we look at the youth strategy. Because I know that we've got people that are specifically here to talk to our new youth strategy. We've got some quite meaty pieces of work on our agenda this evening, and I know that the Bristol Futures will probably generate quite a lot of scrutiny and questions. So if we take the youth strategy first, then people are able to kind of lead, really, is what I'm thinking.
We're just moving the future strategy to directly after the youth strategy, is that the idea?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So, moving on then to agenda item number 7, which is the Children and Young People's Policy Committee update. So this is the report that's provided to us as a committee on the general performance across the children's services. And right, Hannah, do you want to speak to this? Yeah.
Looking to press the button. But we're not going to press the button. So this is the usual update report that we bring every time, and sort of summarises policy developments, data, and what the service has been doing since the last committee. So In the last committee, we did say a lot more about the schools white paper, and we will also talk about the SEND reforms at the next committee. So the only bit of policy that I've highlighted is a proposal from the Department for Education to look at fostering and how we commission care on a regional, sub-regional footprint. So regional care cooperatives and fostering hubs have been some new sort of policy initiatives that the DFE have been coming out with and wanting us to work more closely with other local authorities in the southwest. And so we're looking at that, and we're making sure that we do that in a sensible way for Bristol children as well as for our area. We'll bring back a further update on that in the future. And then obviously we'll talk about youth work today. We've been doing a lot of that since the last committee, a lot of building of Young Futures Hub as well as the support for the work here. Youth Guarantee is also on the agenda. We have published the Best Start in Life and Our Early Help strategy, which I commend to you really, because both of them are really clear on, in terms of the early help work, the scale of the support that we have for children and young people in the sort of non-statutory space. So it's a really clear document. I just wanted to say thank you to Kirsty, who was instrumental in producing it, as well as the Best Start in Life strategy, which is really focused on really young, babies and young and very young children, how we work with health and between family hubs and the early years sector. So we have got an item coming on the early years, thinking that's in June as well, but just wanted to point those to you. In June we will also bring our final year outturn position in terms of the finances. We've obviously got a big paper today on transformation, which speaks to quite a lot of that work. And it's worth saying we're still expecting these inspectors. I know I feel like I've been saying that for a long time, but we know it's going to be before the end of June, so it is very soon. I'll highlight on this report that we talked a bit in November about child sexual exploitation in the city, and I think we are likely to see a bit of coverage in relating to some cases in police-led operations in the next few weeks. I just wanted to recognise that. You'll understand that because there are constraints about reporting and talking about that work, but I did just want to highlight it as part of this report. So if we come on to the data then, there's really good, I mean Victor talked to it really, there's really good EHCP, well, there's better EHCP data, sorry I won't say it's really good. So, but definite signs of progress in terms of our assessments of education, health care, needs assessments in the data. So in March, in the data we saw a 31 percentage point rise in terms of the speed of assessments. We saw a reduction in the number of assessments awaiting assessment and an increase in those that were finalised in the month as well. So we are definitely seeing progress in the work, and I just want to recognise the work of the team, which continues to obviously be very challenging, and recognise the context in which we're working to support parents who are and young people who are waiting, and we are seeing progress there. On attendance, there's data in this report which continues to highlight challenges. I mean, in general, the data sees secondary attendance as there or thereabouts, but it's still below the national average. The same with children missing education, elective home education, and suspensions, which are all marginally heading in a better position, but they are all of concern still, and particularly keen to keep a careful eye on both suspensions and exclusions, and I know schools are working hard with us there. The children's social care data continues to look positive really across the board. I think one of the things that we're looking hard at is the number of children in care, which has continued to rise. So you can see that in paragraph 21, the overall rise. And obviously, we don't make a judgment about how many children in care we should have or shouldn't have. We're not far off benchmarks of other similar authorities, but obviously it is something we want to understand, that what's happening there and what can we do to support those children, and also staff who will be feeling the pressures of working with more children. Also, how can we move more children into permanent front door position. And then the only other thing I just wanted to highlight, there's quite a lot in the report about our performance board, which meets monthly, first Wednesday of the month, and it looked at a number of things this month, including our front door and our first assessment service. And there's information in the paper about our work on young carers, on housing, which continues to be a challenge for young people who are 16 and 17, on the health of children in care. And I did just want to end with the news that all 6 of our children's homes have been judged good, which is brilliant. And whilst Ofsted haven't looked at our overall services, they are always in our children's homes, it seems, but they continue to be judged good in every case. So that's really good news. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at committee members to indicate they want to speak. Andrew, Shona, Tim, and let me, yeah.
Thank you very much, Hannah. I just wanted to pick out 2 of the performance measures. So the first one is the 5th one down, the number of children EHCP waiting for special school placement, and obviously that's increased.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, while children are waiting for specialist placements, is there any sort of additional help that we give those children, those families, during that period of time?
Yes, so a number of those children will already be in a mainstream setting with additional support to support them whilst they are awaiting a specialist placement. So a large number of that cohort will be awaiting a specialist placement but won't be without education. And then some may also be being supported by alternative learning provision. So there is support in that respect, particularly as sufficiency grows and we see more places coming online. So I think I presented in, I'm trying to think where it was, maybe March, the Education Capital strategy where we will see more places coming online. Most kind of closest to here would be what we're calling Briarwood South, which is in Throckmorton, which will bring, I think, about 84 places, for example. So whilst it won't open fully till September, there might be some children who are in the mainstream setting and then on their way there. But we also do traction where they may be awaiting a specialist placement but don't have sufficient education as well at the moment, and we track that quite closely in terms of making sure that there's support there for them.
Thank you very much. And then the next one is one below, actually, the percentage of young people who are in NEET, and that's above the national average. We've talked about that previously, and obviously we're better at counting or finding these people than maybe other local authorities are. But I'm just wondering, how confident are we that our sort of initiatives such as the Youth Guarantee will make a difference to that?
So you've timed your question perfectly because our head of education skills and lifelong learning has just arrived, along with our colleague David Harrigan, who leads the NEET team. There is a more detailed paper on the agenda, I think, on NEET, which will probably go into those grants. I think before we, I suppose to preface the paper that is on its way, generally where we have been given grants by Department of Work and Pensions or West Midlands Department Authority, we have quite good performance against our KPIs, and some fantastic case studies of where we've got some really brilliant outcomes. So there is some really good work happening there. I think there are 2 challenges. One, it's a very much grant-funded service, and therefore it can only work to the maximum of the grants available, and those can be limited. But also the wider economic pressure where we are seeing unemployment rate rise nationally, and we're experiencing that in Bristol. But Jane, I'm sure a bit later in the agenda we'll be talking in much more detail about our performance against those.
Shona?
Thanks, yeah, briefly about the regional hubs that national government are suggesting. I know, for example, Baines are quite sceptical of how effective that some of that can be, and that's, you know, some of our carers need that local support. So just you're probably in conversation with them already, but definitely something to push back on the national government about if we don't feel that it's right for our carers. So I wanted to flag that up. That I assume you would have our support to do that if you felt you needed to.
Thank you, and yeah, thank you. I mean, mean, yes, I think there is quite a lot of scepticism about, I think, the pace and the scale of the change on top of all the other changes in place in the system. And certainly all of my DCS colleagues are united to say, you know, we need to do the right thing for children, that's what we're here to do, and having that conversation very actively with the DFE. And we can bring a further update when we get a bit further, but suffice to say we won't be doing anything until we've talked with the committee, for sure.
Great. And then my only other question was just about, on page 24, about the link, paragraph 15. I just want to check I'm understanding it correctly. It seems that there's quite a strong link between pupils who've been suspended and children eligible for free school meals, that the vast majority of suspensions are for children with free school meals. Is that, am I understanding that's correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I assume, I guess that's something that we'll, if we could take that further on in the future strategy.
Exactly.
Exactly. Thank you.
Councillor Whittington?
Yeah, thank you. Very detailed report, and obviously I don't sit on this committee, so if somebody's asked these questions before, I apologise for that. But just three things. On the table on page 21, for the percentage of final EHCPs, I'm just wondering why the target is the national average rather than the 20 weeks, which is the statutory timescale for those.
I think it, so I'm fairly sure in our corporate reporting the target is 100%, so that's probably incorrect actually, but we do track the national average, the England average, which I think we recognise has been declining as well, and whilst we've seen some improvement in our performance against 20 weeks, it's still not at the England average at that point. So I think we're absolutely striving for 100%. I think we're realistic in the sense that from where we are with the backlog of assessments that are there, it will take time to clear that backlog and get to a position where 100% can be done on time. And then obviously recognising there are changes on their way in 2029 when the thresholds will shift quite dramatically. So I think the first milestone for us is to get back to national average and then grow from that point.
Yeah, I can understand the benefit of, you know, looking at the national average, but I would have thought the target would be the statutory limit. Just on that as well, it says excluding exception cases. Would it be useful to just know how many exception cases there are on a regular basis, so that, you know, because that could exclude a significant number, or it could be 4.
It's typically a very small number. Just to give some reassurance, I don't have the exact figure, but it's usually in the tens as opposed to hundreds. And there's some very specific criteria set by the DFE on what is an exception, but I'm sure we can add that to the next report.
Okay, thanks. On page 22, the children in care placed out of area, just noticed that's gone up slightly. I'm just wondering if we know whether that was due to the needs of the children that were being placed, or whether it was due to our lack of capacity to place children within area.
I think the correct answer is probably both, isn't it? Wants to speak to this?
Yeah, I mean, well, shall I speak to the capacity and speak to the need? So we certainly have a sufficiency challenge that we recognise in all areas of care, both in fostering and in residential. And that's, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about that in the transformation paper as well, as kind of the work that we're bringing forward to try to address that. We know that that's a national challenge, but it's pretty pertinent here. And we do have children who we think could go into foster care, who we have to place in residential care because we don't have the right placements. And we work really hard with those children to bring them back and to step them back down through the system. But at the moment, that's kind of the market that we're dealing with. And I want to speak to the kind of needs that we're seeing as well.
Yeah, so we track and we understand when a child's coming into care if we think they could have benefited from a family environment, foster care, sorry.
There's a bit of a hum in here.
Yes. So we track all our children when they're coming into care to understand if we think they could have benefited from a family environment and gone to foster care, but don't go to an adult authority. children's homes. So there is a mix, but some of those children absolutely been identified as needing to move away from Bristol and an opportunity for different kind of experience and context. So it is a mix, but we can track which is which, so keep an eye on it.
Okay, thanks. I know we'll come on to the risk report, but that has been a high risk for as long as I've been looking at the risk report. That's been top of our risks, hasn't it? So really important that we do crack on with that, I think. The last point I've got is on page 23. Number of children missing education has increased from the previous month, but at 226 it's significantly lower than this time last year when it says it was 4,442.
Yes, I think
That as
too many fours.
somebody who looks at statistics a lot, that leaps out as probably not correct.
I think that's right, and we can issue with the minutes the correct figure.
Is it 442, do you think, or is it?
I would imagine. Yeah, we'll just check. We'll just triple check that. And so this is the definition is of children without a school place anywhere. So it's often most children who are classified as children missing education have recently arrived in the city, including from overseas, or have left and the system hasn't yet caught up with them. But obviously we're concerned about those that are not on any roll of any school, and wanting to make sure that we find a place in the school, which is our legal duty.
Okay, but yeah, if we could have.
But yeah, we'll check. It's definitely not 4,000. Yeah, apologies.
So what I'd say, I just want to come back to you, Tim, on the sort of a couple of these. So the 20 weeks, if you're aware of any local authorities that are 100% 20 weeks, please let us know. Because the only one I've ever known is the City of London. And that's probably because they haven't got any kids. It's mostly businesses. So I think that would be the first thing that I would say. And the out of area, most children that are coming into care are sort of 15, 16, 17. And a lot of it is related to CCE or CSE, which is, again, what goes back to what our executive director was talking about, the case that's coming to court next week. And whilst children go out of area, it's not the same children that we continue. So the numbers of children, particularly in residential care, outside of the city, or outside of the area, has not gone up as much as the number of kids that are in care over the last sort of year, 18 months. It has gone up slightly, but it's, as a percentage, it's not the same as the number of kids in care. And they're only kept out for as long as is needed for that child. So the plan will be, if they need to go out of area, because they need to be kept safe. So there's a large number of children for whom it is necessary for them to be moved so that they can then be kept safe, and a plan can be put around them. So it's almost that they need to come in to be safe, and therefore they need to go out of the city so that they can be safeguarded, and the situation they're in can be understood.
So I suppose my response to that would be the question I was really asking is, are they out of area because that is best for them, or are they out of area because we don't currently have the capacity to bring them in? Are you saying they're all out of area because that is the best?
No,
situation?
I'm saying that there are children that are out of area because they need to be out of area and they need to stay there.
Yeah.
And there are another group of children for whom that's all there is. We haven't got any internal foster carers, or the foster carer that is suitable for them is out of area. But it also could be that they go out of area because it's a family member. So there are lots and lots of different reasons as to why children might be going out of area, and it's not necessarily because there isn't any internal provision for them. It might be that the provision that is available for that particular child at that time in their lives, and because they came in at that point, is away from Bristol.
I just seen, sorry, Heather had her hand up.
No.
No, I mean, I only wanted to actually have a suggestion, because looking back through the various committee work program and so on, and this is obviously something that we've been working on, that there have been big improvements with opening up the new homes and so on, but there is clearly still work to be done. And I wondered whether, I'd like to suggest maybe like, if we don't seem to have any task or finish groups lined up yet, whether we maybe look at having a task or finish group around out of area placements. I mean, that could include things like, obviously some children are out of area because they're in a special school that is out of area. So like looking at educational placements as well, but this is, you know, it's one of our biggest costs in the council, and it is something where we want to bring the children home if that's right for them, you know, and so I think maybe that's an area that we, if we've got the resources and time, we could do like a more focused piece of work on.
Yeah, I mean, if committee members are, when we go onto the work programme, if you kind of speak, we can speak about it then. But you're right. I mean, we're moving into year 3 now, or we will be in May, and we're yet to finish one task and finish group. And the resource is supposed to be there for 2 in any one particular year. So we've certainly got the space in that sense when it comes to, but it's just whether, yeah, I mean, but I'm aware that Kasia wants to do one on play. But
so that's the inquiry day then, isn't
that's
it?
yeah, and I think that actually it's more of a joint one, and it's public health, because we don't you know, the only land really is the schools' lands, and children's services don't have, and it needs to be other areas of the council that are pushing that forward. So yes, it's certainly something we can consider, absolutely. Councillor Collins.
Yeah, so I wanted to look at the rise, if you like, in the number of EHCPs being finalised and stuff. I'm really pleased to see that rise, and I can acknowledge, you know, from responses that I've personally had as councillor looking after for when people have got concerns, that the communication is definitely improved. And I think that was one of the biggest issues, was around communication. And I think there's been quite a good sort of like upsurge in that communication amongst officers and councillors from my own experience. However, my question is that because we've now managed to get in more staffing to work on the EHCPs, such as speech and language therapists and educational psychologists? Because I know that was something that at one point we had a bit of a thing about. I just wanted to know how are we achieving this in terms of, because I'm really happy to see it, but what are we doing right that we need to continue doing, and how can we kind of keep that so that we don't start dropping again?
Focus and investment, but I'll let Vic speak to it.
I mean, I think firstly, thank you, because I think the team have firstly worked really hard, and you know, I think want to do well for children and young people in the city, and have worked really hard at that. But the approach we've taken has been to make sure that whatever we do is sustainable, and it isn't just about throwing lots of resource in and trying to solve the problem quickly, but leaving other problems down the road. So we did redesign the service, which did involve some additional capacity in some key areas. We've also been looking at the ways of working and processes. We've been looking at the support services and how health can contribute their assessments, as well as our educational psychologists. So we have increased the number of educational psychologists as well. And yeah, I think, you know, it's been a number of things. It's not been purely just about investment. It has been also about ways of working. I think the team has been under sustained pressure for quite a long period of time, and I think that the national reforms coming, you know, again, there's some pressure around that. But you know, a big part of it is, you know, they do really care about the work they're doing. They are really passionate about it. They've got some better tools now. They've got some more capacity now in the areas that they need it. But it is also going to mean that we have to keep working at the sustained level for at least the remainder of this calendar year to get the backlog down. And I think it was great when, you know, in March they hit their target of 170, which is what we presented. Our aim was at this committee in September, and you know, I think there's a different feeling in terms of what the team can do. But we are, you know, always looking at how the team can be supported. processes and ways of working that will continue, because even with reforms there will still be EHCPs on the side of this, so it's important to recognise it will be a feature of our service for some time.
Okay, so go back to what Tim said earlier about targets and how we're currently matching the English average, that given the step in the right direction that we're going, and you be saying about being able to sustain that, it looks as though we're going to be like pushing above the national average. Would that be an idea of where we're kind of heading in terms of the sufficiency and the continuation of the work that the team are doing, and that pushing that up, that we might be pushing it up as well?
Yeah, I think there's two things, I suppose, and the data sometimes doesn't give you the full picture. We're watching the decline of the backlog, and I think over the last 2 or 3 months we've started to see that decline, and that's the first time in a long time now that it's been coming down, and again because they are now hitting their targets around that. That doesn't always speak to timeliness, because a number of families have been waiting a long time in that process. So we're not anticipating a sudden jump in timeliness. I think again it will be part of a gradual improvement. My hope is that when we get to January 2027, we see the backlog reduced down to a more manageable level, and we do then see timeliness improve at that point. But we also need to be mindful of, over the next few months, while reforms are being communicated more widely and different changes are being announced, what effect that might have on the number of requests we receive, and whether that will bring a different pressure to the service, because we've modelled our improvement plan on a forecast of what we expect in terms of number of requests, and if it deviates significantly from that, it will have an impact on these numbers.
So my second question is, with regards to children who have got EHCP and then not having a special placement, but while they're waiting, I'm aware from some of the work I've done, is that they're not just being left. There is special provision. So what kind of special provision and extra stuff are we doing in that interim? Because although they may not be enrolled on a school, something's happening, isn't it?
So if they're in a mainstream school, so if a child's in a mainstream school but is awaiting a specialist placement, it might be additional TA, teaching assistant.
No, I mean if they're unable to go to school. So even though they can be enrolled on a school but unable to attend because they've been suspended, etc., or for whatever reason the parents aren't sent them to school, there's that additional sort of like tutoring and other provisions that mean that a child is being offered that extra support, or the family is being offered extra support. We're not talking about, oh well, they're not enrolled on a school, can't get a replacement, oh well, never mind. We don't have that, do we? We have additional stuff. That's what I was, alternative provision.
Yeah, so
that's what I was looking for. There is that's being offered as well.
We do, yeah. So if a child doesn't have an education health and care plan, but is being supported through alternative provision, that would be working with one of our teams. They would work with the school, which may be either the last school that they were in, or the school that they're not attending at that point. And there's a combination of offers, so that might include in reach, where we might offer some provision that could go into the school to support the child, or possibly off-site alternative provision as well. And then and there are some children where we've got to match the provision with what's going to work for them. So if they have emotion-based school avoidance, or they're struggling to get to school, it's thinking about what is the hook to support them to re-engage in education, but also where are the health services supporting them as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Vic, did you have the numbers for CME?
So children missing education, so the figure in the table is correct. I've lost it now, sorry. 336 at present. Last year that figure was 442, so the figure in the table is correct. I think the narrative underneath on is not. So we'll correct that. But it has been it's significantly lower than it was last year.
When we're as we're talking about specialist places that we know children's needs show us that remain absent. We've had our capital programme, but we are still waiting for the Department of Education to give us permission and the capital to start building the Trim Valley Special School in Southmead. They asked us what we wanted to do. Was it just before Christmas? Do you want 8 million or do you want to build the school? And we said we want to build the school, and pretty much we're still in that place. Under the safety valve contract, the Trim Valley Special School was supposed to be opening this coming September, and that gives us some indication of the difficulty we're going to have at meeting both, well, at keeping our deficit down, because we're now circa 9 million plus as a result of the delay on that school, and that just goes up every single day, but we're not hearing from the Department of Education. So that's a difficulty, but most importantly, those children haven't got those special school places that we know that they so desperately need. But we can only progress the things that we are in control of, and so therefore that capital programme is something that we're keeping a very fine eye on and making sure that that's moving at the speed, at the maximum speed that is physically and humanly possible, given that there's lots of other constraints that exist around building new stuff in the way that we know that those things occur. Okay, so if there's no further questions or comments on that, we'll move on to agenda item number 8. Okay, we're asked to note the report.
Noted.
People are noting. Thank you. The corporate risk report is also for noting. So this is, we've got the two risks from our committee that are on the overall council corporate risk, and then underneath that we've got our own. Hannah, is there anything you wanted to say about those risks?
So just to say again, those of you that weren't here last time, we are the only committee at the moment to be publishing this level of risks, because you as a committee wanted to see them, which is fine. So this is our working register of risks, which is helpful, I think, to bring it into the public domain. So as you can see, the two big ones are, we've already covered them, DSG and vulnerable children safeguarding risks. And I think the vulnerable children, in answer to your question to Councillor Rippington, I think vulnerable children at risk will always be on our risk register, probably, and should be. There is a third risk you can see further down, which is related to a risk of serious harm from death from serious youth violence, child criminal exploitation and sexual exploitation. That's the next big risk, which sits just below the corporate risk register. And then, yeah, basically you can see these are the risks that the team feel are the ones that we're, managing most, and welcome sort of comments or questions about them. We've talked about quite a lot of them already. Send data, NEETs. There's a risk in here about maintained nursery schools deficits. That's because the scale of maintained nursery schools deficits is very high. Sanctuary services. There's a risk in here around sanctuary services and some of the sort of challenges around asylum seekers and refugees and providing for those communities in Bristol. I'll leave you to read the rest, but we're happy to answer any questions you have about this risk register or anything you think should be on there. I'd be really happy to hear. Thank you.
Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Just regarding the risk to the DSG CR62, it's 21, so it's unchanged. But I'm just wondering, because of all the uncertainty we've been talking about going forward, should that risk go up? Because obviously the safety valve is finishing, there's going to be a grant funding system. We don't know if that's going to be enough to cover the rise in EHCPs going forward. So it seems as though the subtext is that the risk is increasing, but we haven't actually increased it.
What do we think about? I mean, so the team are currently in the process of putting their transform it, the sort of putting what we know we're going to be doing in the coming years around our SEND system in the format that the DFE want it to be in order for them to go, oh, okay, yes, we accept that you've got your transformation programme and that you're doing the things that you need to do in order to manage the costs and do further earlier intervention. If that's not accepted by the DFE, when's it June?
June, is it beginning of June?
Yes.
Then I think definitely it's going to go. Obviously, it's going to go up. But it is 90%, 90+% that the DFE is talking about pegging down for us. So we're looking at circa £100 million of the deficit. But then also there is talk about what's going to happen in 2028, because that is supposed to be the rest of the government that takes on the SEND kind of overspends. I don't know. Do you want to speak a bit more to that about what you consider to be the risks around the finances?
I think, kind of, as you've said, really, the SEND reform plan, which we'll be submitting on the 19th of June, and every local authority will be submitting, and there's challenges for lots of local authorities where they might be going through LGR or elections at the moment. We'll be submitting those, and I think the expectation is that a number of those will then qualify for payment of what's called the High Needs Stability Grant, which will be notified about in the autumn. So there will be a lag between June and probably September, October before we get feedback. For Bristol, it's 90% of our deficit. We've calculated that based on period 10 positions, we have got a full outturn for the year. Just yet, it would be 100 million, and therefore would bring down the deficit significantly, and it would still leave a residual liability, which I think shouldn't be ignored. So the risk would, in theory, come down quite significantly on that basis. I suppose the only contrast to that is that the expectation of government is that the EHCP cohort will grow from circa 5% to 7.7 before coming back down to the kind of 5% level in 2033. So
it's quite a long-term plan that they've got.
So we will be absolutely supporting a large cohort of young people for a considerable period of time. I think this is where Secretary of State talks about decade-long reform and is alluding to that. So we may mitigate some of the financial risk. We may not mitigate some of the other risks that come with that, and a large cohort, possibly impact on specialist provision. I think the answer is it's dynamic, and we need to watch.
And obviously, it's a high score anyway, so we're obviously paying a lot of attention to this issue. Okay, thank you.
So the suggestion at the moment is that because we as a committee don't have a meeting between now and the deadline that the DFE set with getting the plans in, and because it's effective on the 2 wards and it's worth quite a bit of money, the suggestion is that it goes through strategy and resources, because we want it to be put through the public domain and put in front of elected members, so that we've all got sight of what that reform plan looks like. That's the suggestion. Otherwise, it would mean that we would need an extraordinary meeting in order to just to look at that. So that's the suggestion at the moment. It's being checked as to whether that's allowed, because it's a one-off plan. So they're kind of checking all the ins and outs about that. But certainly, it's not going to just be sent to the DFE, and it won't be, sort of published and put into the public domain and voted on basically and discussed and sort of scrutinised. But it won't. I mean, we won't see much different, because early intervention, early support, that's good practice, and we know we need more SEN places because our school place strategy tells us, our needs assessments tells us we need it. So it's not anything there's not really anything in there that is a massive surprise or massively different to what we would and are already doing, because good practice is good practice, whether you're in Bristol or Birmingham or Bradford. It doesn't make any difference, because that's what good practice is. Okay, thanks. Any other questions on the risks?
Just a quick one about the primary school places, because I know we've talked about this before and the PAN. Can you just explain a little bit about how the work still high.
Yeah, well, you know what we're trying to do, trying to keep schools open wherever possible, although we don't make those decisions because so many academies. So bring the plans down in the bigger schools so that they're better able to plan and manage that. The last time I spoke to Sue Coombs, pretty much we were on target to bring down the numbers. I don't know whether is that still the latest update?
That's right. So we've taken a number of places out already in the autumn, which have been published and will come out. We think that this year, so this autumn, so the process is we consult and work with our schools over the next 6 months towards the autumn, with a view to that then removing places in 2028, so sort of 3-year lagged. We think that this autumn we will achieve the target that we have for primary school places, and because of the engagement we've done already, we know which schools are likely to need to reduce PAN, and we've also got the admissions data from this year with first preferences, so we know which schools have been better subscribed than others in wanting to manage that. But we're taking a planning area approach where we're asking schools to meet together to balance the load rather than one school taking the brunt of all reduction and therefore have potential risks of closure or other things. So we should achieve that this year. And then for secondary, I'm sure colleagues, children grow and they'll be thinking about secondary. We think at the moment, because we have a number of young people who will be educated outside of Bristol in bordering authorities, alongside we import a number of young people to our schools. We don't think we'll see the effects on secondary quite as much, and therefore will probably be manageable without any significant reductions, but that's probably 2 or 3 years out at this point.
So do you think that risk might come down from high to medium?
I think by January next year it's likely that it won't feature on this research study.
It says Bristol children placing unregistered
Dear
provision.
Councillor O'Connor. That's the wrong button.
Sorry, that's right, yeah. Risk of children placed in unregistered provision, which is unlawful. Is that alternative provision that Sue was talking about, or is that children's home? It's not very
Yeah,
clear.
that's children in care.
So I know it's probably the worst place to look. I've seen a lot of horrible stories in the media online about unlawful children's homes and abuse and God knows what. And it's probably not the best place to be looking for information about that. So I just want to make sure I want some more information about that.
Okay, so in May 2024, there were 14 children in unlawful placements. Is it one?
One.
So we currently have one, and that's been the case for 18 months, 12
We went
months.
up to back down to one.
The children, so what happened with that, some of those placements, those children removed. I was really clear that children need to go into registered provision, end of. And this is part of what you find out when you come into administration, because there was no way that I knew that there were 14 when I came in this role. Until you ask the question, you don't see this kind of data. And so some of those children, where it was that they were living, have been supported to then go through the Ofsted registration process, or are going through the registration. Is that the one that's still?
Yeah,
Going through?
The one child is in, that home is registering with
Yeah.
Ofsted.
So we do have illegal and registered
With one
children.
child.
But how many homes, like, if we had 14 children in these homes, how many unlawful homes do we have?
There's one child now that is placed that is in a placement that would fall into this category, but that home is in the process of going through the registration process. So some of the 14.
All of our providers, our children's homes in Bristol are registered unlawful.
So the unlawful one, I presume that's like an independent agency or somewhere where that
Yes.
child is, but they're in the process of doing
Yes,
it. They're not run
exactly.
by us, but we're
Yes.
having to pay them to have the child.
And they're going through that process. So a number of those children, those children's places May 2024, the council worked with them if they were suitable, if they were able to go through, and they wanted to go through the Ofsted registration progress, they were supported to do that. If not, the children, we found other places for them that were registered, that's fine if they did want to do that. That is not to say, however, that there aren't scenarios whereby it actually makes more sense for children to be in what would be considered unlawful placement. So I'm going to give you one example of this. So we had siblings where the parents and carers were taken into police custody. It would be absurd to not put the staff team into that into those siblings, into that household, in order for that staff team to look after those children, together and be in their own home, whilst whatever the police needed to do with that parent carers, that process happened. The alternative would be to say, we need to find what would be registered provision, legal provision, and it might mean that child 1 goes Bradford, child 2 goes South Bristol, child 3 goes, I don't know, London, something like that. That would be, in and of itself, an absurd scenario. And when and if those sorts of situations arises, Fiona, do you just want to say how you work with Ofsted in order to inform them and manage so that they're fully aware that this is the decisions that have been made about that particular case?
So we have really tight oversight if we are in that situation. So we can't place a child registered without Anna as our Director of Children's Services and Chief Executive informed and Councillor Townsend being informed. And once we do that, we have weekly oversight. So I chair weekly oversight meetings to ensure that we understand that child's circumstances, and we have regular visiting patterns. So the social worker has to visit weekly, etc. until a certain period of time. So there's quite tight oversight. I always inform Ofsted if we have a child unregistered, and I update Ofsted on a monthly basis that they've agreed that's when they would want to know about. And so I provide them with a report on a monthly basis if we have any children unregistered and what their current situation is and what the plans for the child are. So there's really tight oversight of those until that child is either moved into registered provision or the place that child is placed in becomes registered.
Anything else? No. Okay then. So let's. So we're asked to note that. Yeah, got some thoughts. So moving on, we're on now on agenda item number 10, which is the Children Education Transformation Update. So this is to update us on our Families First. So this is the second time, if you remember rightly, when we were in City Hall, we had some of the leads for the programme come in and speak to us. So this is the second iteration of that update. We are being asked to approve or delegate the programme of funding, which is 2.6 million for this coming financial year, after Strategy and Resources have approved it. So it's a key decision, obviously. I'm going to ask Heather and Heather to outline the report. And Amanda to outline the reports. And I think there'll be a lot of interest in this. There certainly was last time. People were really interested. You start?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Also just wanted to kind of note you've got a slightly different format of your report on transformation this time. So we have done some work to consolidate our transformation portfolio in children's education and bring it under 4 pillars, which you've got noted on the second page of the report. Education, what we're calling a working title at the moment, Prevention Neighbourhoods, Our Families First Partnership and Stable Homes. And you can see that spans kind of continuum of need all the way from universal up to specialist services. And we're trying to really rationalise the transformation and programme work that we're doing in children's education and make sure that we're really tightly overseeing it, and that we're really noticing the connections between programmes. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we come on to stable homes, but I think where we've had issues occasionally in delivering some of our transformation is perhaps because of that join up. So this is an attempt to really rationalise and consolidate what we're doing, and as such we'll be bringing this report 4 times a year, and each time you will have an update as you have today on each of the 4 pillars, with a deep dive into one of those four. So today you're going to hear a lot more about Families First, in line with the approval that we need for the funding, and the fact that we're coming to the end of, well, we've come to the end of the last financial year and the work that we've been doing in that area. And next time it will be on one of the other four pillars. Each time we will give you a brief update as well, so that you can stay appraised of the whole programme. So I'll cover the brief update of the overview, and then Mandy's going to take us through the Families First work specifically. We don't have any of our design leads with us today, mainly because they're out delivering training and working on the kind of the event sustainment of that programme. And we have a bit of unexpected absence as well. But we'll come into that in more detail. I just want to give you a quick overview on the education piece, SEND and AP, and the financial kind of sustainability and improvement work that's going on there as well. We've talked a little bit already about the white paper, so you'll see that that's referred to in here, and had some amazing feedback from DFE calling our transformation work ambitious, coherent and collaborative, which is fantastic to hear. And 59% of that action plan is now complete, as well as the improving picture on EHCPs that you've already heard a bit about as well. Prevention in Neighbourhoods is a new programme that you probably haven't heard about before. It's kind of, we're approaching this in two phases. So initially we're looking at all of our preventative work in children's and education, which includes things that you've heard lots about in the past already. So our family hubs, Best Start in Life, and some of the youth work as well that you're going to hear a bit more about now. And we're bringing that work together to kind of consolidate and rationalise and make sense of a really complex, rich and vibrant landscape in early health, but one that hasn't always had coherent oversight in children's education. We're trying to kind of make sure that we've got accountability built into that system, and that we're seeing it as a kind of a systemic whole, moving towards a much more ambitious programme that we're currently at the business case stage for right now, as to how we can roll out a more preventative approach to service delivery across the council as a whole, and particularly focusing on children's housing and adults, and what we can do in a cross-cutting way to really work preventatively, so that we can address families' issues in a holistic way across the council. So you'll hear more about that next time. And then our Families First partnership work, which is confusingly has the same name as our local Families First programme, which we're going to hear about in a minute, but this is about the National Reforms Programme, which is led by the Department for Education. We've done a lot of work in this area already, which you've heard about previously, particularly around alternatively qualified staff and the staff working in our neighbourhoods teams. We're moving now into a programme approach, particularly looking around the multi-agency child protection teams, which is an area of reforms that requires us to work collaboratively across the statutory partners and schools, to ensure that we're embedding multi-agency working at every stage of the child protection process. So we're starting that work with partners at the moment, and we're going to deliver it through our transformation programme. We've got some staff in place in health and in the police to support us in that, and we're looking at kind of how that work is developing across the region as well, because obviously our health and police partners work across that broader patch. So again, you'll hear much more about this work in the coming months, but just to give you an update that programme is kicking off at the moment. And finally, Stable Homes, which I won't go into too much, because it is very much the kind of next stage on from our Families First local programme, which is looking to provide continuity and long-term sustainability for that, and bring it alongside some of our other transformation work that you'll be familiar with, particularly around our in-house children's homes, also our 16 to 25 housing, some of our work for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, but looking at sustainability for our children in care, both from a kind of a sufficiency perspective, making sure that we've got enough placements, but also making sure that children are held in the right part of the system, that we're making sure that children are coming into care only when they absolutely have to, and that when they do, we're prioritising a family-based setting for them where possible. And so that's kind of continuity work from a lot of the amazing work that's been achieved through Families First, but also bringing it together with a number of other strands so that we can make sure that those interdependencies are really clearly held in a single programme. I'll hand over to Mandy to give us a bit more information on Families First in the last year and the funding ask that we're bringing to you today as well.
Yeah, okay. Hey everyone. So as you know, Families First is Children's Services End-to-End System Transformation Programme of 25-26. I think when we came last time, we sort of explained the approach that we took in that it was a number of seconded design leads that alongside the strategic partner, and then working really closely with all of the senior leads and heads of service managers across the system basically to deliver the programme. And I think as Heather pointed out, a lot has been achieved this year, so I wanted to sort of just go through some of those highlights. I did send over a slide pack as well, which has given a bit more detail of actual individual children's circumstances, which I know people were interested in when we did the agenda briefing. So hopefully that highlights some of those like individual examples. So just to go through some of like what the individual projects have achieved. The fostering project, we've been able to develop a whole suite of digital tools, which doesn't sound very exciting, but what that's enabled the services to do is on a day-to-day basis be able to see every single foster care that we've got that is in-house that is able to offer a home for a child, and that in itself has been quite transformational in that it gives the teams that are working in that area the visibility every day to be able to match children in a much sort of more effective way. So it's not that we've got lots and lots more foster carers, but we have been able to increase the number of children in those foster homes by 37 more than we did before, purely by improving the systems, which has worked really well. There are lots of other sort of innovative stuff happening within fostering, and we've got fostering reforms coming. We're really positioned well to be able to sort of adopt some of the new things coming from the fostering reforms, given what we've achieved already. For example, the room maker scheme that's been highlighted, we're already sort of working through the capital sufficiency project to be able to increase numbers of beds in homes for some of our existing foster carers. We've also, I know there's been quite a lot of conversation about children in out of authority residential homes. We've been able to bring out of those residential homes 39 children so far, and that doesn't, it may not sound a lot in terms of the number that we've got, but it's really enabled us to steady the numbers so that they're not growing in relation to the numbers of children in care. But we're also, from a practice point of view, those children are reviewed on an in-depth level every single week. So we now can see over the course of the next 12 months the number of children that we've got identified to move. And what we've seen with that is that in the summer months we tend to have more moves than we do in the winter months, and that's quite connected to education and some children sit in GCSE. So the intention is we don't move children unless it's the right thing for them at the right time, but we do try to move them as quickly as we possibly can, because we know we don't want children in our authority placement. So it is a bit of a balance, but we've got a dedicated team that basically do that work week in, week out. Through our Value and Families project, we've the Connected Families team that will work with all of our adolescents. So when we came into the programme, we knew that our target sort of cohort of children that were coming into care more often, more regularly, were our adolescents. And we really wanted to focus in on that as much as possible. So over 100 families have now been worked with by that service. And in the pack it says 78% of those families are remaining together. It's actually, at the moment, that's increased to it's around about 85%. So the work that team are doing is really starting to produce some really good outcomes for families. They're getting really good feedback from families. And the social work teams are already also working really closely with that specific team and are saying this is helping us in our day-to-day practice, so that's really positive. We've got quite a well-established partnership panel that is focused on trying to prevent children coming into care, and that really is, it's a really effective panel in that it is a range of partners that are bringing together lots of resource that we can say, you know, if we know that a family are in crisis and there's a possibility a young person's going to come to care, then we've got housing representatives and we've got education colleagues there that are able to help put quick plans into place to improve that situation, and that is also, we know, preventing children from coming into care. The national reforms that Heather was mentioning in relation to the National Families First, we've led on the plan so far for family network meetings, and that is obviously to try and stabilise more children in their family homes within their wider family networks. There's been a big training plan that's been rolled out, and over 500 of our workforce now have been trained. So that's our social workers, alternatively qualified practitioners, our reviewing officers, our child protection chairs, and now we're sort of starting to do that with our partners as well. So that's been quite a good development. We know that some of our children that are in care do also escalate into children's homes, and so we've got a specific forum called the Stability Forum, CAMI chairs, that is really focusing on trying to hold children in their existing foster homes, so that we're not seeing the sort of twofold effect of children in our care escalating as well as children out of care coming into children's homes through lack of sufficiency. So 26 children, and that forum really became established in about November, so it's really getting going now. So that we know that once it's embedded will continue to sort of do some really positive stuff. Through our commissioning project, we've been reviewing children's care packages with our externally commissioned provision, and that is quite a financial sort of result really with that. It does give us better sort of care plans that are more appropriate to the level of need of those children, but it also is saving money at the same time. So and through our permanent, so we are focusing on special guardianship orders and reunification. So we are seeing more children. That is an area that we've got more work to do, and that's contributing to our children in care numbers being higher than we want to. And that is also a bit of a focus that we want to go into stable homes to really look at how we sustain that over time, how we enable more children to come out of care, and then for those that are in care that we're able to get the right foster homes for them. So that's some of the highlights. In terms of the financial target, we've over-delivered, so we set out to save 6 million and we've saved 6.6 million. The point of the programme that we're at now is that we're really trying to embed all of the really good work that's been happening and use the learning to sort of keep improving it as well. The really great thing, I think, is that we've got all of the services that are leading that work themselves. So as a programme team, either the design leads are now back in their existing roles, so some have gone back into the services as service managers and through care, back to being a service manager in fostering. So all of that expertise and the learning that we've sort of had through the programme is now also going back in, but also the services that do the day-to-day operational work are really leading this work, so it's not a programme as such. And so I guess where we want to take this into stable homes is continue with the sustainability of this. So our focus right now is how do we sustain all of this long term and keep improving on those numbers and the outcomes for children and getting those really positive stories that we're seeing. And that sustainability work is what we want to take through to stable homes. And in addition to that, think a bit more about what, like, improving our sufficiency. If we want to move a child through the coming home pathway from a residential home, we need to know that we've got the right foster home for them, and so those things are really interconnected. So everything that we do for children in care, the sufficiency of children's homes, they're so connected that we need to be able to have all of that in one programme to be able to say, we know the children that we've got to move or change the care plan for, but we also need the right provision to be able to move them into. So I think that's probably the overview.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
What we've been asked to do here, so that we need to vote on, is 2.6 million. So this was part of the main budget that we passed, I don't know, 2 months ago or something. And so what we're doing here pretty much is asking SNR to kind of move it across. So it needs to go through SNR, but it needs to come through us and get passed through us, that we're asking for that money to be able to draw down on that. So it's year 2 really of the kind of children's services transformation that started 25-26 with an initial investment of 36 additional full-time members of staff into children's services, and this is part of that pathway to try to bring it into services and be sort of practice, you know, everyday practice, something that becomes then how it is that children's services practice within in this area of work. So has anybody got any questions or comments about this? There was lots of interest last time. Okay, Tim, lots of interest about this. So Tim, Shona, and then if anybody else catch my mind. Okay, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. I think it's quite refreshing actually to hear discussion about the outcomes that a transformation programme is delivering before you talk about the financial benefits of it. So that's nice to hear. I think you said delivered something like 6 million in savings last year. I'm just wondering what we're spending 2.6 million this year. What's the sort of financial saving that's projected from doing all this work this year?
So next year we've got 16 million savings attached to the Stable Homes
16?
programme. 16, yeah.
Okay.
So some of that is, a large part of that is the next year of what was in the medium-term financial plan when we set out Families First, and so the majority of those savings will come from the continuity of Families First, and then the rest of it will be the combination of the other projects come together.
And can I just check, because I don't quite understand the process here, but is this the full amount that was in the budget for this year for children's and young people's transformation project?
Yeah, and it was also in the medium-term financial plan for 24-5.
Yeah.
So this is year 2 of.
So this is the full amount for year 2. They won't be coming back later in the year to say we'll draw down some more from that.
No, not for this. There might be other stuff, but not for this.
So across the four pillars, each pillar has like a budget allocation,
Right.
all of which has been in the MTFP already. This drawdown is for the Stable Homes pillar only,
Okay.
but we won't come back later in the year for Stable Homes.
Okay. But for some reason it's in the budget as one large amount, and you've got to ask specifically to spend it, have you?
Something like that. I don't know. It has to go through S&R because it's
just because we're voting on it. It's nice.
It's
to know
a
exactly
it's a financial mechanism that we need to go through as a committee in order to basically get the money that the big budget allocated to CYP.
But this is the amount that was in the budget that you thought you were going to spend, and you just now saying.
Yeah, we're asking to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Shona and then Susan.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for the little case studies and case examples. I think that was really helpful to kind of bring it to life. Assume it's obviously not their real names, but it's really helpful to kind of see how that's impacting people on the ground. My only question was about the fostering, the Families First, the national Families First thing, and if we have because I believe the national deadline for implementing it all is next March. Do we have an internal deadline or expectation of when that's all meant to be wrapped up for Bristol?
I mean, we're aiming for next March. For the full implementation. We know that particularly with the kind of partnership piece, there's quite a long way to go. We don't expect that it will be a kind of a single big bang come March, but we may work towards that over the course of the year. But we're not kind of setting ourselves an earlier deadline for it being fully functioning. We have been working closely with the DFE for a long time, over a number of years, on the kind of implementation of the rest of the reforms. And you'll have heard previously that we're quite far ahead with many of those, but the multi-agency child protection team is the bit that we're yet to implement, and we know that we'll need some time to get that in place.
Am I right in thinking that we can't make the police and education take part in that? So we're
have mandated
DFE have mandated it, so we're trying to that's obviously not the thing that Director John.
And we do have partnership groups, I'm jumping ahead. We have police and health representatives already within a partnership group that are working towards the reform, so it's a subgroup of our safeguarding partnership, supplemental our children's school. So that's established and working.
Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I was just looking at resource implications, page 81 of 19, reading down through, and it says about there will be an in-house program lead and 2 further service lead change leadership posts to oversee the successful plan. Yeah. I like the words in-house. So is that because they've previously been not in-house, and by bringing this in-house, that we're able to provide a stable, ongoing, committed member of staff that is being employed through the funding for this, and therefore that's one of the things that we're saving money on, because obviously, you know, there's this big thing about having people come in and do their thing, but if we're in-house, so is that a change?
So the first year of this programme has been delivered in partnership with Newton, which is a consultancy firm, and we've had a joint team. And so Mandy's been the programme lead on that team, and we've had design leads from within Fiona's service who've been seconded into those roles to deliver the programme. And over the course of the last 10 months, the Newton team has been stepping back further and further from the programme, and it's been transitioning towards what we've been calling embed and sustain, which is effectively our kind of BAU delivery of that work. So the Newton team is very small now, they're finishing up what they're doing, and in stable homes we won't have a consultancy supporting us with the continuity of that programme. So this is the establishment really of the staffing in-house to support that programme. And we hope that we'll be able to recruit to that from many of the staff that have already been involved, and although many have also gone back. And it's really important to us that in order to really sustain and embed the progress that we've seen during Families First, that we do need people who've been involved in the programme to then continue their operational work, and many of them have transitioned back to their existing posts and are doing that sustainability work now. So that's why we need a new team, so that they can carry on and really do the operational work.
But the fact that new team will be in-house.
There'll be BCC staff,
directly,
yeah.
working with the team that is already kind of there.
That's right, yeah.
And saving money in terms of the cost.
Yeah, well, it's not spending, it's cost avoidance as opposed to saving.
Thank you.
Because savings can also be interpreted as cuts.
Yeah.
And it's not cuts, it's about not spending money that, given where we were with the trajectory that was going, it was like this.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we need to do something differently, and it's about trying to bring that the future costs down. Yeah.
That's kind of what I was implying in terms of savings, not as in, you know, not spending, but spending more.
Is part of the investor save stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of invest earlier, so that therefore need doesn't escalate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anybody else got any further questions about this? Okay, so we do need to vote on this, and that means that I need to read out the script because it needs to be done officially. So we are being asked to, as a committee, number 1, approve the Families First programme. Number 2, authorise the Executive Director of Children and Education in consultation with the Chair of Children and Young People's Committee and the Strategy and Resource Committee, as well as the Director of Finance, to take the steps required to implement the Families First programme in line with the maximum budget allocated for 26-27 as outlined in this report, and that is subject to the approval of the transformation budget in total at S&R. And number 3, acknowledges the full scope of the programme and projects that constitute the Children Education Transformation Portfolio 26-27, and number 4 notes that an updated report on progress of the transformation portfolio will be brought back to committee in, it says August, but we're hoping it's going to be September. 2026. So, can I ask for a seconder, please? Thank you, Susan. Okay, so we vote without, so can I ask that those that want to vote for this investment, please raise their hands. Okay, that's unanimous. Yeah, okay, unanimous. Who am I looking at? Ashley. Yes, okay, unanimous. Thank you very much. And so that takes us on to the change in the agenda. So we are going to now go on to
Youth strategy.
Youth strategy, which
Yes.
is agenda item number 11. So this is information and development around our Bristol youth offer, updates on the future, the Young Futures Hub, also the Play and Youth Alliance is represented, so we'll hear a bit more about that, and to share plans basically to strengthen what's going on for our children and young people outside of their statutory education, hence partly why we're also at 224 in South Bristol. So I'm going to invite Kirsten Carr, Student Lead for Early Help and Youth, to introduce and outline the report, and we also have a couple of representatives that may wish to, including Rachel.
So thank you. So yes, so the report outlines our current plans linked to youth services and developing a cohesive youth strategy, set in the context of the national direction and our Young Futures programme. So Youth Matters is the government's 10-year plan focused on rebuilding and reinvesting in youth services. The aim is to provide every young person the support, places to go and opportunities to thrive. And emphasises the importance of safe and inclusive spaces for young people and young people's engagement and participation. The national strategy sits within the context of an estimated 73% reduction in spend on youth services since 2010. And many young people say they don't have a trusted adult that they can speak to outside the family. Almost half say that they spend most of their leisure time in their bedrooms, with all of the impact and the risks of the digital world and the accompanying isolation that go alongside that. And young people say they feel they have limited opportunity to influence decisions that affect their lives. Research evidences strong social return on investment in youth work and positive social, economic and health outcomes for young people. So in Bristol, we do have a vibrant and diverse play and youth offer to build on. It's primarily delivered by the voluntary community sector with some BCC funded provision and additional targeted provision from Health, Integrated Care Board, Police Crime Plan and the resource that the voluntary sector bring in themselves, which is significant. The offer includes open access youth clubs, detached youth work, targeted support, mentoring, wellbeing support and so on. So there is a strong offer, but there are some challenges as well that we do need to address. So similar to the national picture, we've had significant reduced investment in the last decade plus. And this has limited the capacity for long-term planners to develop and leadership of the youth offer. There are fewer skilled and qualified youth workers across the city because of that. And young people tell us that they need safe spaces, they need more youth work activities and trusted adults. And it can be hard to find out what is going on in their communities. And part of that's linked to the fact that because often funding is short-term funding, projects close, they change, so it's quite difficult to keep up with what's going on and what's current. We know that there are gaps in provision and that there's pressures on services that we need to address. So our plan this year is to co-design an aspirational youth strategy that builds on modern, creative and integrated youth provision for the future. As an early adopter of the Young Futures programme, the DCMS funded programme, we receive a one-off local youth transformation fund of 500,000 this year as well as revenue and capital funding for the development of the Young Futures Hub. And that funding is supporting us to progress key priorities that were outlined in the Bristol Plain Youth Strategy and deliver to 4 key objectives. So the first is around strengthening leadership and coordination of the offer, and we'll do this through appointing a strategic lead for youth within our prevention and early help service to lead the collaborative development and the coordination of our strategy. We're funding the Bristol Plain Youth Alliance to further develop and QA the youth offer, quality ensure the youth offer, and we're collaborating with partners to secure funding to expand the offer. Secondly, we want to appoint a participation lead who will be responsible for the co-design and delivery of a young people's participation strategy. We want to strengthen young people's opportunity to have power and agency to co-create decisions and services that impact their lives, not just within our directorate but across the council and across the city. And we're using some of that LYT funding to fund participation work within areas, within communities that can then feed into both the area and citywide developments. And then thirdly, we'll improve communication, quality and impact of the youth offer, and we're doing that through a number of LYT funded projects, including developing a shared database which will enable the voluntary sector to impact and outcomes through youth work, the development of a youth-led digital offer, and a Bristol Youth Workforce Programme, and that includes a training programme and also the development of clear youth work qualification pathways, which are very much needed. And then our 4th objective is we are developing youth hubs. So our ambition is that there will be youth hubs across the city that enable young people to connect with each other and with trusted adults and access activities and support and opportunities in one space. And partners across the City Council, the voluntary sector, health, education, police and youth justice service are collaborating to develop simpler pathways to support for young people, including through co-location and co-delivery within the hubs. We are confident that this will result in a range of improved outcomes for young people through the hubs, including prevention from crime, improved safety, improved health, educational and post-school progression outcomes. The East Central Young Futures Hub was launched on the 1st of April, and I don't need to talk about South 224 in the South because we're here. And we're also actively seeking funding for an additional hub in the Avonmouth and Lawrence Western area of North Bristol. We identified a clear gap, both in terms of youth service delivery, but also in terms of suitable venues from which to deliver that we really want to address. And there are other people who will talk more about the hubs in a minute, but I do want to highlight just before I finish that we're also embedding new governance arrangements at the moment with a really clear line of accountability for the Plain Youth Strategy to the Early Help Board, to the KBSP, which kind of strengthens that line of accountability and with aligned youth-led governance. And the aim overall really is to build a coordinated approach that supports early intervention, reduces inequality, and ensures that young people across the city have got access to safe spaces, opportunities and the support that they need to thrive. And the strategy aligns very much with the vision for better connecting services and communities and the Council's wider work to develop an integrated prevention and neighbourhoods model that we've just been talking about. So that work is very much aligned to that. And we've got Rachel Robinson from LPW, who's been instrumental in particularly the local youth transformation programme. We've got Matt, who you've already been talking to, and we've also got Charles Lawrence, who's the CEO at Full Circle Docklands, and who is leading on the management of the hub, the East Central Hub.
Thank you. So welcome we've got 3 senior leaders in our youth area. Committee, please do ask our senior leaders because the hub is already almost a month old, so important addition to youth services in East Bristol. So please, so anybody wishing to comment or ask questions on this. So what this is for really is noting as much as anything else. The strategy will come back, but I think that youth investment has been a long time coming, and certainly in the years that I was in opposition, we saw youth services, the funding being cut, and for me this is part of what we're seeing from the new National Labour government, with more of a focus on basically children and young people, that I really felt was missed, particularly towards that sort of end of the previous government. So Tim, if we start with yourself, Andrew, Kerry, and then everybody's right. Okay, so off you go.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's just looking at those statistics on, nationally how youth services being cut. I hope everybody really welcomes the kind of national focus that's been put back into this now. But also, I think this youth centre, which is, absolutely fabulous, shows that we did do something to buck the trend during those awful years. But it's good to know that there is more coming down the line now, and I'd be really interested to hear I can see what this place is going to do. I'd be interested to hear what the other youth hubs, how they're going to work, and what kind of building, is it building, what sort of building is it? Is it presumably existing building in East Bristol? And how is it going to work compared to somewhere like this? I imagine it's a lot smaller.
It really is. It really is. Well, Dublin's building is about 100 years old, and it was given to the youth of Bristol back in 1927 because, believe it or not, back then there was a youth violence problem. And so the king and the local, let's say, philanthropists came together and bought the building for the young people of Bristol then, and it's just amazing that it's still being used for that purpose today. So to answer your question, it is a lot smaller than this beautiful building. But what we are doing in East Central is the hub and spoke model, which Kirsten briefly mentioned, and that is where we are building on the existing provisions that we have in the areas, which is Lawrence Hill, St Paul's, Central, and a little bit of Eastern, and we are better coordinating our services and resources to ensure that no matter where our trusted adults, youth workers, professionals meet the young person, there's no wrong door. So the hub and spoke model in East Central is essentially a more strategic alliance and coordinated effort and resource sharing provision that ensures 7 days a week there is a trusted adult for young people across the area. What makes this particularly interesting, and what I love about 224 as well, is that because it's a test and learn model, we get to combine our, let's say, outcomes and evidence, and that can help feed the strategic ambitions for other areas across Bristol as well, to help us better implement the test and learn model and the outcomes that we will hope to achieve through these spaces. Also, it's no longer just like theory. Our plan is now being put into actual practice, and I always say when it comes to our young people, they all got their own stories. No matter what door they walk through within the network, they all come with their own stories. And as a city, as a sector, it's not our job to change them or fix them. It's our job to ensure that they got the tools to write the next chapters themselves. So through this new coordinated strategic alignment, we could call it, the aim is to ensure that all of our services are being utilised, that they're being shared, and young people have a much better variety on offer. Before we did used to work a bit in a siloed way, but now through the hub and spoke model, we was doing it with the Alliance, like coming together and making changes on a citywide level. We're doing it through the different area partnerships, but now through the hub, it feels like we're really practically on the ground and delivering as a unit and not as a siloed organisation. So Yes.
So you have staff in the hub,
Of course.
but they go out to the various youth organisations?
That is the actual ambition. It's to ensure we're sharing our young people. So if we've got a group of young people on a Wednesday in the hub,
Yeah.
there's no reason why we couldn't be doing warm referrals to them to CYN down in the centre on a Thursday and the saunery on a Friday, or basketball on a Saturday, or women's basketball on a Sunday, for example. So although we're not sharing staff, we do share training opportunities, and we do share, there's probably is a little bit of sharing staff in terms of bank staff, but all of the different hub and spoke organisations, we have our own staff teams.
Can I just one quick follow-up? So, and this relates to me and my ward, so apologies for that, but St Anne's House, they have a youth worker there at the moment. So that's outside of the East Bristol hub. Is there is this hub doing anything to kind of work with them to help them progress their?
I think it's really important to identify that we have got the East Central Hub, which Full Circle are leading. We have got 224 that obviously we're starting right now and we're leading. But there are 187 playing youth sessions a week that happen in the city, across the city, and the Bristol Playing Youth Alliance do a huge piece of work mapping all those sessions to understand actually our aspiration is for every young person to have a choice of activity within a mile from where they live. So we would like to get to that point. That requires significant investment to allow that to happen, but it's not that just the hub in East Central and 224 are the only offers of youth services available for young people across the city. And part of the local youth transformation pilot work is around making that easier for young people to see, because you're exactly right, Bricks are a relatively newer organisation in terms of delivering youth work and do some really great stuff, good stuff in St Anne's, and they're part of that bigger alliance so they can get that connection and that support within Brislington. But what we know is at the moment there's no easy way for a young person to log on somewhere and go, here's my postcode and here's the 5 or 6 different sessions around my house. There is one, but it's not user friendly at all. So part of the local youth transformation pilot is around that digital youth work offer, partly of having a digital space for people online, but also partly working with young people to find the best way that they want to be given information, and then setting up our information to be given like that. So a young person from Brislington has the opportunity to go to St Anne's House and the youth sessions they do over there, but also knows that 224 is a thing they can come to as well.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Yeah, my question actually follows Tim's question. It's also about Brislington. I represent Brislington West. I wanted to know what your geographical target for 224 hub is. So obviously you're focusing on Parkliff, Knoll, Fieldwork, South Bristol.
Yeah.
But does it extend into Brislington? So Brislington is technically East Bristol, but it is south of the river as well. And we have some areas of deprivation in both Brislington East and Brislington West, Hunter Estate, for example, Brislington West, large parts of Broom Hill in Brislington East, and a lot of children in those areas do say there's nothing for them to do. There isn't much supervision. I mean, it's not entirely true. There are things happening. Young Bristol have their mobile youth home girls, for example, that comes to the Sutton Estate in Brislington once a week, but it's not huge. And I think they would love to come here, and I just wonder if you're going to focus your energies and try and bring Brislington kids over here. There is a bus route, of course, now, 36, so that's one way they could get here.
Yes, the short answer is yes. So we know that most young people, from looking at the other youth zones that are already operational around the country, most young people travel around 2 miles to get to a youth zone. That's not to say that that's the only young people that come. Some of the youth zones have young people that travel for an hour and a half in a car to get there for the facilities that are available. Our prime focus will be South Bristol. Brislington absolutely is an awkward ward, because technically from our boundaries as youth workers, I think is it Brislington East is in East Central and Brislington West is technically in South, or the opposite way around, can't remember.
As constituents, they're both East Bristol.
Yes, but the way we split the city up in terms of social care boundaries and that sort of thing, one falls in South and one falls in East. So we have a big CRM system, which means we can track where young people are coming from. So if there are young people not coming from Brislington, we can go out and do some engagement work in there to bring them in. We are focusing on that sort of South Bristol area, which does cover some of Brislington. But if a young person was to come from Southmead or from Easton or from Fish Ponds, we're not going to turn them away. But we may not actively go out into the top end of Southmead and Henbury to actively promote the youth zone, but they're young people, they talk a lot, it will get round, wind will get round, and young people are welcome from wherever.
I was going to ask about some engagement and how you get those hard to reach children. So some children probably can't afford to come here or don't things for them, and how do we engage those young people to make them think this is a space for them?
So part of that is just around a youth work offer, if I'm completely honest, and delivering that outreach service both within schools, but also identifying that schools isn't the only place to do that, because a lot of young people don't get on with school, and actually some of those young people that don't get on with school really need a youth work provision. So a prime example of that is our team have been going out and doing detached around sort of the Hengrove Leisure Centre part, which we know is notorious for young people, to be blunt, hanging around in the car park there, smoking weed and drinking. So, but what we've been able to do is take a tablet out with us with photos of the youth zone in there, so you can have those conversations with a young person in a car park. And show them photos, and the excitement and engagement builds, and that's something we're consistently going to have to do with the youth work team, to consistently do that. They might not be the young people that are walk through the doors in the first month, but they'll be the young people that our outreach and our community engagement work will bring in, because they'll start to feel like this is a place for them where they belong and where they're confident to be here.
Kerry, and then Sue, and then Sue.
I've been a youth worker, so I know what an amazing job it is. I've been a detached youth worker, and I absolutely loved it. And I've worked in Hengrove, I've worked all across the South Bristol, and I really, really enjoyed it. In the paper, it only mentions detached 3 times, and I know you did mention that. And I know there's been a lot of conversations, and I've been shouted at quite a lot, online and offline, by residents and professionals and volunteers that work in the industry. And I don't think they're going to read this committee paper, so they might be watching. So if they are, can we have some assurances that detached isn't going to be taken away, that it's going to be as well as, not instead of, and you know, this amazing building is going to be for everything, because you know, there are some kids that don't want to come indoors, that like being outside. I was one of those children. You would have not got me in here, no matter how amazing it was. It wouldn't have been for me. So can we have some assurances that nothing's going to be taken away? Because I live in Hartcliffe, and lots of kids have grown up with no provision, very little provision, and we've only got one youth when we should have 5, and all the rest have gone over the years. So yeah, I just want to reassure people in my ward that it's for everybody. There's going to be detached and everything.
So we won't deliver detached as an organisation, partly because if we're going out and working with young people in the streets, our primary objective will be to do it more as outreach, to try and get them in to the youth zone, whereas detached is meeting young people where they are. So there's no primary objective of getting that young person into a youth club. You're meeting them in the park or the Morrison's car park or wherever it is. I'm just going to talk about South Bristol specifically. So as Kirsten was talking about in terms of the strategic structure that we've set up, each of the areas has an area partnership, and attached to that area partnership is a strategic area plan which is co-produced by the local authority and by the voluntary sector, which outlines this is the priorities for our area, this is what we need. So within South, absolutely 224 is a big part of that plan, but it also identifies that 224 is not going to be the answer for every single young person in South Bristol. So a huge part of our strategic priority over the next year in that area plan is around detached specifically. And what that means is the area plan is written in quite a way that any organisation that is applying for funding from any grants or trusts or anything like that has an evidence-based document that they can demonstrate that their £10,000, £20,000, whatever it is they're applying for, links in with a wider partnership piece, because what we're seeing is grants and trusts want that partnership work even more and more and more in the funding that's available, and when it's a small amount of money, 10 grand, cut it across 4 organisations, it's not going to touch the sides. So it demonstrates to grants and trusts that here's a strategic document which aligns the £10,000 we're asking for with the bigger strategic picture in South Bristol, so we're able to better utilise the funding that we can draw in alongside the council and alongside other pieces of funding to allow for the detached offer and others offers within South Bristol to continue. There are similar structures within East Central and North as well. It's just like co-chair the South one, so I can talk about it in a lot more detail.
But exactly as Matt's described, happens in those other areas as well, to have that area partnership, the plan that is strategic, so across the city then. And then there is also citywide join up, because obviously there are kids who are moving around from area to area. There's some new detached work starting in city centre at the moment. So I
think it's really exciting when you've got new buildings, but as you say, that's not the whole story. And I think right from the beginning of 224 even being an idea, even before it was known as 224, was it was very much seen as part of the ecosystem in the area. And I think that's the same for the work that Docklands has done well now for 100 years, and same across the rest of the city, that each organisation, each way of working, the more we pull together as an alliance and then in collaboration with statutory partners, is how it all joins up, rather than seeing it as, well, this is my organisation and this is what we do. Actually, it's what do children and young people in this area need, and how do we all co-invest and collaborate to make that happen.
Sorry, could I just ask what detached youth work actually means?
So detached youth work. So what you've got a youth club where young people choose to come into that youth club and attend, and there's no booking system or anything. They can just turn up. That's called open access. So sort of the polar opposite to open access is detached. So detached is meeting young people where they're at. So it wouldn't necessarily be done in the building. It might be meeting young people in the stairwell, in the car park in Hengrove Leisure Centre, because that's where you know young people hang out. And your primary objective when you're doing detached is not to get them into a youth club, it's to work with them and build relationships with them in that area. So it might be that you take a barbecue out in summer and you're making burgers with them on the edge of the car park or on the field at Hengrove Leisure Centre, building those positive relationships with those young people and able to have those really great youth work conversations, but you're not constantly going, come on James, let's get you down to the youth club, let's get you down to the youth club. You're having that positive relationship with a young person in an area where they feel safe, whether that's a park, a stairwell, etc., etc.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
One clarification, just answer the question, but how are you engaging with local youth groups? And obviously, one step and another issues, school exclusions, and also some schools also study exclusion in the city schools, city academic fair for them cover. So I know you're new now with these projects, but how do you ensure that we're going to meet the targets and to meet, especially when the youth organization there, because a lot of people doesn't know that it's youth now, now it's a second point is you mentioned about my second question is, I understand the government is spending a lot of money now with you, that's great. Are you still working at the local organizations like Boxing Club and also the Leisure Centre you just mentioned, because it's very important, this opportunity often also the young generation. And part of the thing I find difficult was also working with the police is very good, but other than the positive side, working with your organization, also local organizations and the police working together, that will make a difference, rather than just waiting until they make an exclusion with students. And you're planning also to make like physical going to schools, which suffer at the moment in the last 2 years.
I think Charmaine said you answer the first bit.
Yeah, well, with the first part, through the Hub and Spoke network, we have commissioned specific, those 3 schools in particular, Fairfield, Cotton and City Academy. We are going to have teams do outreach and workshops with those schools for the young people there, to not only work with them in the schools, but to do external trips and to refer them into the entire Hub and Spoke model network. In regards to Empire Fighting Chance, they are a spoke of the Hub and Spoke model as well, where we are able to refer young people from across the network into that particular service, whether it be their boxing champions, whether it be for one-to-one mentoring support or for career opportunities and pathways. And lastly, when it comes to the police, we work very closely with the police as a sector, and it's not only in times of crisis. So down at Full Circle Docklands, the police at one point was visiting us on a monthly basis, coming in their uniform, playing basketball with the kids, getting to know them in a safe space, in a good environment. So when they then go out onto the streets, that stereotypical barrier between the 2 groups are kind of more broken down. And so the police feel more confident knowing that, you know, these are actually young people, they're not just a young male in a hoodie, and the young people know that, hey, that's Chris from who comes and sees us once a month on a Wednesday, and I beat him in basketball last week. Do you know what I mean? So those relationships are being built. It's been happening for a few years now, and as mentioned just a moment ago, through the hub and spoke model, we are working very closely with Empire Fight and Chance, being able to refer young people into that service for free. And we have got targeted workshops, outreach, provisions happening in those 3 schools that you asked about.
Yeah, there was, I'm really liking the collaboration and everything else is really good. My computer's currently thrown me out, so I can't remember what I was reading, so I'm just going to go with what I can remember. With regards to the youth hub and all the other stuff, and there's going to be one built maybe at Avonmouth, is that right? The continued collaboration, would that, because obviously I'm thinking about the massive cultural kind of like impact, the differences and everything else, you know, life in sort of central Bristol, life in south Bristol, etc. Are there going to be opportunities for those cultures to kind of come across, and so that kids from south Bristol can see what kids in central Bristol are doing, in east Bristol, in north Bristol, so that there's that, because you know, things like the Fight and Chance, because we got a wicked gym and we got the wrestling ring and the boxing and stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, let's have a bit of competition going, bring those kids together, because this is kind of the sort of stuff they like.
One of our aspirations with the hub and spoke was to actually get a minibus to do just that, to ensure that for the sector we got an accessible minibus that can just be easy to hire out. We're still trying to decide if LPW is going to host it or the council, and so we can move the young people around and break down those postcode barriers. And you know, we even used Carnival last year to do a parade of youth clubs where we got a youth group from Southmead to come down to Docklands, from Easton to come to Docklands, and we all did a mass camp workshops in order to celebrate the carnival culture, and it was a really brilliant experience. And this year Carnival wants us to continue on that new tradition type of thing, you know, to share the culture and, you know, to just work together. So the collaborative ambitions between all the youth groups and getting the young people together, we have to do that. It's the only way to really go forward. And, you know, as chief execs and leads of these different spaces, we got a very good relationship, and I'm sure you know, probably seen an email flying around about getting my youth senior team of management up here with the young people, so it's definitely on the cards. It has to happen.
And I think, look, to be frank, the youth centre is going to have some of the best facilities in the city for young people, and actually that's why we've primarily said any youth organisation in the city does not have to be a South Bristol organisation, can come and use the facilities at any point when we're open. So that will be, you know, Shah's team ringing us on a Wednesday night and going, we've got 10 seniors, we're coming over to use the rock climbing wall, and we're going to go, great, amazing, because it does lead into that cultural understanding of young people, moving young people around the city. But also a lot of this is being set up already. We've got an annual Youth Voice conference that brings young people together throughout the city. We're exploring the opportunity to have a second one of those happen this year. Young Bristol continuously run activities between their different clubs which are based across the city, so it's just enhancing the work that we're already doing and working in partnership. I'm going to throw in a quote here from the NYA. So the NYA, when they came down in the peer review, the NYA is the National Youth Agency. Just so you said that Bristol were the most collaborative, forward-thinking, and put together city in the country for their partnership within their youth sector. So being able to continue working that partnership is just a standard practice of what we do. I'd have paraphrased that, it's not actually written like that in the report. So.
It's not far off though,
Yeah.
it's almost a direct quote.
So going back to the point 23, create a participation lead role responsible for advocating meaningful participation with children education across the council. So my question is, when we're looking at that role, participation, are we talking about having somebody in post who is leading on that participation, bringing those, you know, engaging and making that, making that kind of position that thing happen in terms of, you know, we've got one person who's going to be like working and linking and.
Sorry, I I mean, I think there's a lot of participation work that goes on across
Yeah.
the city.
Can I
But to
just-
have a lead kind of like,
From, you know, in the council, it's a role to sort of bring
Can we
it
just
together.
clarify what we mean by participation here?
Yeah.
Because I think there might be a little bit. So we're not talking participation like participation in activity.
no,
We're talking about participation in terms of youth voice and
Yes,
young people having their voice heard.
yeah,
Rather than sort of us.
kind of making
Sorry,
sure,
Hannah.
kind of making sure all these things are kind of happening, in the way that the young people want, so that, but also to make sure that everybody knows what's going on in the city. I mean, just for an example, when I worked for Bernardo's, when I was a little bit younger, I was a participation officer, and my job was to engage with all of the groups and activities, and this was like 0 to 5-year-olds, so like all the children's groups, and kind of build a portfolio of what was going on in all of these places, so that we all knew who was doing what and when, and to make sure that people were being involved, families and children and young people, and everybody had a voice and they all had a say in what was going on, and how to kind of break down any of those kind of barriers and get rid of all the like little clicky groups and stuff like that, and really kind of, you know, take a big bit of plasticine and just put it all together and just make one happy ball.
Should I just try and respond to that a little
Yeah,
bit? So
yeah.
the participation is slightly different from what you're describing there, in the sense that that participation is about, as you say, kind of role that you're describing is about understanding what's going on in the area and then helping that all linked up and get linked up, which happens sort of through our area partnerships. So that's kind of what helps to do that. The young people's the young people-led digital offer is part of what they will be doing. That project is really looking at how they promote the offer, how they understand what's going on, and how they enable other young people and professionals to know what's going on in their area in a very live way. And to encourage young people to participate in that. The participation lead role is more about, what we know is we have lots of participation forums and lots of places where young people have a voice and they're able to kind of talk about how they want services to be led. A lot of that work happens out in the community as well, in local areas. We have the youth council. But what we hear is that young people are often asked for their opinions, but what they don't hear is how those opinions and how what they've said has made a difference. The other thing we don't have is a really strong way of us leaders being able to see, well, what have young people told us in the last year? What have they said that they want and they need, and kind of pulling that together in one place, so that it can really influence our planning going forward. So this participation lead is about putting all of that together, coordinating all of the work that we know is already going on out there in the community, that the youth council are doing, that potentially is happening in schools, in school councils, and trying to bring that into one place, and making sure there's a feedback loop back to young people all the time about how their views and how they've influenced decisions, how that's resulted in real change.
That's really useful, thank you very much.
Shona, Kerry, Ellie.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, the launch of the hub at Docklands was really good. It was a great evening, and the food was amazing. I was just sort of curious as to, like, so it's been like a month or so now, but like what differences you've noticed or the staff have noticed in like how things are for young people or for the staff since the launch.
I would say it's the two-way referrals going in and out of the hub. So we've got more engagement with like the youth justice teams from the Bristol City Council, saying, you know, I've got a caseload of a few young people, this is their like criteria or their overall picture, how can you support? And that's just saying, well, you know, come on down, here's a whole timetable of what they've got access to, what they can get engaged in, and on top of it, maybe bringing them down and letting us have that one-to-one informal triage with the young person to find out what they're interested in, and having more variety and more pathways to refer them through. So I would say that's definitely been a much welcomed enhancement on our provision since the hub has been launched. The press has been a new layer to everything as well, in terms of, you know, just more interest in the youth sector and what's going on down at Docklands, and about the hub and spoke model, and Bristol being chosen as one of 8 early adopters across the country. We all know that's an amazing achievement, and we recognise that, you know, we've got to do a good job to ensure that all young people can have a youth hub within a mile from their homes. The staff team, I would say there's not more pressure, but they've definitely realised that they've got to kind of elevate their game a little bit, you know, and raise their confidence, and because, you know, we're not really used to being not in a spotlight, but there is a bit of a spotlight happening right now, and so we're just, you know, we've got a standard to uphold. So yeah, so it's definitely the two-way referrals. And what I enjoy most is the collaboration with the other hub and spokes. You know, we've never worked so closely before with other organisations, and so understanding that we are all truly on the same page and we want what's best for young people, and we're already kind of thinking about beyond this potential 3 years, like what would that look like? Would everyone be happy to like put in a bid to enhance on what we've just recently built and developed? And yeah, it's just been really interesting, and it's nice as well in terms of the co-design and the strategic implementation groups that's helped to develop this entire model. But yeah.
It's an important point there about impact, because that is one of the responsibilities of being an early adopter, is being able to evidence whether or not the approach works, and that's obviously really significant for future resource into Bristol, but also the kind of, because it's a national programme, so we will be making sure that we're able to show that this way works, or that, you know, how we can improve it or do things differently into the future.
That's great, and yeah, I mean, I hear from other local authorities nearby that they're quite jealous of what Bristol's got on offer, so we can encourage that. My only other question was about, I don't know if you can answer this, it talks about the youth voice groups, and that, like, we've got the youth voice network and so on. I wonder if anyone knows how many youth voice groups you've got in the city, roughly.
Sure. So you have Bristol City Youth Council, which is the biggest one in the city, which has around 28 young people that sits on it. Bristol City Youth Council, so that will be your youth councillors that come in and speak to you in those sessions. And then underneath the Bristol City Youth Council, you have your 5 equalities groups that all have separate youth voice forums. So that's your disabled young people, your children in care, your LGBTQ plus young people, your black and brown young people, which is just being sort of revitalised at the moment. I'm missing one. Children care leavers, and your young carers voice group. So they all feed into the youth council for those groups. So they're your sort of main equalities groups. And then the majority of youth organisations out there have some kind of youth forum that feed in some different ways. So for example, Young Bristol Youth Moves have one, which is called the Young People's Development Group. Young Bristol have a youth voice forum that brings together all of their groups from across the city. So most youth organisations embed youth voice in their work in some way to have some kind of youth voice forum. I would say the challenge is internal within schools. We don't really have that connection in with school councils and the work that happens between the school councils and the external voluntary sector and local authority participation forums. So that answers your question.
Thank you.
You mentioned digital very, very quickly, but and you said it wasn't user friendly, but there is some kind of app out there. But we had I don't think you were around then. I don't know how many people in this room came to our meeting in Hartlepool in 2019. We had an ASB meeting. It was really well attended, which never happens in Hartlepool. And one of the things young people asked for in 2019 was an app where they could find where all the news services is, and it's just never ever materialised. I think that's a real shame, because that's a long time. You know, if a 7-year-old asked for an app 7 years ago, they'd be 14 now, and that's probably when they would need it. Or if they were 14 then, you know, that's too long to wait. So I would really like that to be improved. If anybody here can do that.
I think that's amazing. I know through our youth co-design process with the hub and spoke model. We spoke with over 100 young people across 9 organisations, and they all made it very clear that they would welcome an app as well. So I believe that fed into what's currently being developed with the digital offer. But what was interesting is that they said they don't necessarily want workshops on there. They would much rather engage in a physical youth club, although they would use the app to locate the service, and they would use the app for mental health and well-being support. Yeah. So.
And Ellie?
There's just so much to absorb. It's really exciting. I've just been listening, you know, as a parent of a young person inside Bristol, it's, I don't know where I'm getting here, but I know it's here, and I'm really interested in that hub and spoke as well, because Bedminster, we've got a very small youth centre, and I think they're very keen to get the benefit of having this facility here, so I know that there'll be, you know, sort of work that's happening around that. I was really interested in that PW and how you fit in, because obviously I sort of know you from previous work, and the fact that, you know, where you are in the city and you as a provider, but I'm really interested in how you, you know, that organisation now fits within this work, and what the impact is of all these changes, because you see young people in a different context, don't you?
Well, we see young people across play, youth and full and part-time alternative education, and I suppose LPW's role has just been to be a part of that whole alliance structure and that work around the voluntary sector collaborating, how we work together as a sector, and very much having a strategy where we get our own house in order, so that as a sector we're strong enough, and also about sustainability, so that we're here for the long term. And we've been involved in that work, I guess, well actually probably since 2017 maybe, kind of trying to pull together some of the work around getting play facilities back up when it wasn't possible to fund play for a period of time. And I think also then trying to broker some of those collaborative conversations with the local authority and other statutory partners. And very much, as I think I said earlier, that concept of co-investment. So rather than seeing it as, well, there's the council, and there's the police, and there's the voluntary sector, and there's businesses, actually, whichever side of the table we're on, whether you're elected councillors, appointed staff, voluntary sector, anyone else, actually we all get out of bed in the morning because we want Bristol to be a better place for children and young people. So if we start there, and then we start to bring to the table, well, what resource, what knowledge, what information, and you start to then move aside some of that old style competition and perhaps more old-fashioned methods of procurement, and move into co-production, collaboration, and almost like a shared stewardship, I suppose, of the economy around children and young people. And I think because LPW works in play and youth and alternative education, which is obviously kids who are as far often from education as it's possible to be, I guess we've just been able to take a little bit of a perhaps a role around being a bit of the glue around some of that collaboration.
Can I quickly add that? I know Rachel was talking about LPW as an organisation, but I think we need to acknowledge Rachel Robertson and all the hard work that she's done for the sector as well, because I feel like you recognise the value in all of the different areas of the youth sector and the play sector, and you recognise the individuals, and she's often given like individuals like myself the support and the encouragement to, you know, use our voices and be involved and participate for the greater good of Bristol. So I feel like as much as she's talking on behalf of LPW, she really is the glue.
I just wanted to echo that, but also the approach that Rachel's just really clearly outlined is, Rachel was very much one of the people behind the development of the Belonging and Thriving plan for Bristol, which is our children's plan for Bristol. And I just don't think we can sort of light it up enough, in that it's really clear, it is developed by all the partners in Bristol, it does set out all of our work, and Rachel was one of the driving forces behind it. I mean, it's not the place to recognise you for all the work that you've done, but I just wanted to say that, and it's such a privilege to work with everyone in this sector, and it's just been such a creative time, so I just want to say thank you, and thank you to Kirsten as well and the team. And just to say a little bit on the north situation, because I just don't want anyone to, we are wanting to develop a youth hub, a bit like we have with Young Futures in the Avonmouth and Lawrence Western area, which is the wrong area. We are looking for capital funding, both in the private sector and across partnerships and revenue funding. But there's a good partnership work, but I don't want anyone to sort of say we're definitely going to do something, because we can't do that until we've got capital funding. So we are working together, including with the school and the port and the youth providers and the councillors together and the MP, aren't we? But we've got quite a way to go.
Just a really quick question. In terms of, because obviously with the hub, it was that there was already the what's it place? Docklands. So the Docklands was already there as a building. Is there anything over that kind of way that we can
Yes.
Access and develop something?
That's what we're looking at. Yeah, we're looking at how can we build a bit, just exactly the same model, hub and spokes. How can we build on existing provision? But we need both people and the buildings in the same sort of model. So yeah, we are working on that, but we know it's a gap. So yeah, we can come back with any further developments. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up on that paper here. So we are asked to.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Can I just ask a quick admin point? I'm parked over in the car park over there, and I suspect some of the others are. I would have been here since just before 4 o'clock. I don't know if anybody knows. Are we going to get a ticket if we overrun?
So it's over 4 hours. So
Yeah.
it's free for 4 hours.
Is
and
it?
then you will need to move your car, and you can't return to Imperial for 2 hours.
Okay. So
Is there any way we can move the car and just park?
Let me have a good scan if happens left.
Okay.
Just where's your car up here if your car's parked.
I was going to suggest
I
I was going to suggest we take 5 minutes. I mean, I've parked in the estate.
Is anyone parked in Imperial who's been here for longer than 4 hours?
Well, I'm nearly there.
If it's only 2 or 3, just bring your cars up and you can park them up here. We just haven't got room up here for more than 4 or 5 cars.
Okay.
Do you want to go and see if there's any space? Right.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, right. Okay.
I was gone.
But I think, 8 is because people arrive 4:04, and therefore in all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I know it's
Yeah.
pain, but-
No. It's fine. So I was going to suggest that we take. Let me finish this and then okay, so we are asked as the committee to note the report. Yep, we're noting the report. So can I suggest then that if I make it, I don't know, just before 20 past, so 1/2 do you think that's long enough? Or however long it takes you to walk across there, get your car and move it.
You should park on the far end of the car park. It's not a big car.
And thank you very much to Shah and Rachel for coming down and speaking to us. And please, any other officers that need to take this chance to go now if you're done. But back. Thank you, everybody. So, Councillor Varney needs to leave after this next paper, which we've had got something to vote on, but we're still for it. So I've checked, and that's so you just leave, Andrew, as you need to. As you need to, please feel free to. So we are now. This is agenda item number. Is originally number 9, but we're taking it as number 12. It's the Bristol Future Strategy, and we're asked to note this, but we wanted to bring it as an update because this is a major piece of work concerning our academies and our local authority maintained schools. So I'll hand over to Vic to introduce.
Thank you. So the school's white paper encourages local authorities and multi-academy trusts to work together, particularly to give place-based leadership to the work of education, and particularly with a strong focus on groups of schools delivering improved support to disadvantaged pupils as well. And over the last year, or possibly a bit longer than a year, we've been working together with our multi-academy trusts and maintained schools really agnostically as one system to think about our key priorities as a city and what our children and young people need locally. So Bristol Future, which has been the name of the programme over that period, is a really strong example of partnership working across a range of different organisations and has acted as a really good model of how we can deliver system leadership to tackle some of our biggest challenges. And the core vision of Bristol Future is to break the link between deprivation and educational outcomes. And what we have seen through all of our data and evidence, and that's not just recently, that's been for a significantly long period of time, is that there is a very clear link that regardless of race or ethnicity or other data, that the impact of poverty on educational outcomes is probably the most significant outcome. And there is more national activity in this as well, as we're seeing through the commission that the government has led as well. So we've been working over the last year and a half with our independent commissioner, Sir John Coles, who's been working pro bono, so at no cost voluntarily, to support our work. Sir John Coles is the chief executive of the United Learning Trust, who don't have any academies in Bristol and don't intend to. Essentially, John is supporting us in an independent capacity to support our work, and was formerly the Director General for Schools at the Department for Education, who led the London Challenge work previously, which was very successful at improving outcomes, particularly for children on free school meals at the time. So, and we recognise that in Bristol, the majority of our schools are supported and led by multi-academy trusts. Approximately 75% of schools in Bristol are run by trusts, and within that, it's predominantly 8 or 9 trusts that run the majority of those schools. So we've been working with those chief executives and representatives of our maintained schools, and in draft you can see the strategy in the paper, which sets out our aims, which are underpinned by 5 key themes. So the first is the Bristol School, which is about developing families of schools that share similar cohorts, similar data, and how we can encourage them to share best practice and build on the good practice that we're seeing there, but also take them to other schools outside of Bristol where there's excellent practice and be able to import that back to the work we're doing. Also the Bristol Teacher and Leader, so we're focusing on developing a leadership programme for aspirant leaders, so future head teachers, but also current school leaders, again to strengthen the leadership capacity we have within the system. We know the impact leadership can have on improving educational outcomes in schools. Bristol Future, so we've been working together with the One City Partnership, but also with partners across the city to develop a pupil pledge. So the idea of that being that regardless of a child's background or circumstance, they have equitable access to what the city has to offer. So the pledge would be a pledge from a number of organisations to offer opportunities to young people, such as seeing a sporting event, going to a theatre, which sometimes are not accessible for those children. And then the final two themes. The first is the most challenging schools, particularly focusing on the schools that have the highest levels of deprivation in their cohorts and how we can support them particularly. And then a real focus on our work in South Bristol, where we know we have some of our biggest challenges in terms of attendance and attainment as well. So the launch of the strategy and this draft strategy builds on the progress that we've already made. So we presented at this committee before that for the first time Attainment 8 and basics 5+ measures moved above the national average at Key Stage 4 for the first time in 2024-25 at secondary school. And that's, we think, the first time on record, which is fantastic in terms of progress we've made, but we know that that needs to be repeated and sustained for that to continue. And then finally, the delivery of the strategy will be supported by the establishment of a board, which will encompass myself and Hannah in our roles, but also school leaders from across the city and the Multi-Academy Trust CEOs, and chaired by Sir John Coles. And the intention will be that so the strategy sets out what we will be doing together, but also that there will be a regular report once a year to this committee as well. I'll just hand to Hannah if there's anything missed in terms of detail.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that John Coles gave evidence to the COVID inquiry around the impact of COVID and and how that was managed during those lockdown periods, which kind of is an indicator really of where he sits within the sort of academy structure. And this is the first time that we've got, basically, because I was like, we need the chief execs in here. We can get the heads from academy trusts, but they're not actually the decision makers in that sense anymore. They are in local authority schools alongside their governing bodies, but actually multi-academy trusts have a different structure, and they have executive leads, and then they have their chief execs. And they are the ones then that are in a position to look at that strategically and make and push through changes or adaptations that are needed in particular schools in order for the system itself to work more closely together. Because I think there is a recognition that the system has become quite disparate, and we needed to kind of try and bring that back together. And it is reflected in the white paper, because the white paper with the SEND reform talks about groups of schools that are working together, regardless of the type of governance that they might have. They might be in a particular location in order to understand and cater for the communities that they're serving sort of in the round. So it also works towards, and this will be how Bristol kind of responds largely to some of the big changes that are coming through for our school system, our maintained school systems. So over to Kerry first, but catch my eye if you wish to, and just ask on this, Kerry.
So I've got quite a lot to say how through the effort and need some names, which we never do. So I'm going to be a bit of negativity, because the ambition is right, but the governance and accountability are weak. It reads like it is a LinkedIn and PDF, lots of polished language about partnership, leadership, excellence, ambition, but not enough about who has power, who challenges, and who is accountable. The strategy is right to say poverty, attendance, exclusions, and attainment are linked. The data on white working class children on free school meals in South Bristol, absence and suspension is stark. But my concern is that the people most affected by this are still not clearly in the room. The report talks about children in poverty, parent issues, family breakdown, housing, transport, SEND exclusion, and attendance. But the governance section names trust, schools, local authority, and Sir John Coles as chair. I'm also concerned that Sir John Coles is a National Academy Trust leader, not a Bristol community voice. If this is about poverty, South Bristol, SEND exclusion, and working class children, why is the board being chaired by someone from an Academy Trust establishment rather than someone rooted in Bristol's parents, pupils, communities, or democratic structures? I cannot see guaranteed places for parents, parent carers, pupils, young people, ward councillors, unions or community organisations. That matters because you cannot break the link between deprivation and low attainment by building another board of senior professionals talking to each other. The strategy says almost all secondary schools are academies, and that the future, and that Bristol future must not be a fifth wheel or get in the way of trust-led improvement. That sounds like the council is being careful not to upset trust rather than being a strong critical friend. I accept that we have to work with academy trusts, but they should not be allowed to mark their own homework. The strategy says there will be a formal Bristol Future Board, so my question is simple. Where is the democratic oversight? An annual report back to committee is not enough. That is being told what happened, not shaping what happens. The South Bristol section mentions Hartcliffe and Linwood, the University Micro-Campus, the Trailblazer, Youth Zone, Transport and Seal Money. It doesn't mention Ignite Plan. That's my ward's reality. So where is the ward councillor voice in the governance? If this is about communities like mine, then communities like mine need power in it from the start, not consultation after the decisions are made. So my questions are, who exactly sits on the Futures Board? Are there guaranteed seats for parents, parent carers and young people? Will ward councillors from the most affected areas, including South Bristol, have any formal role? What power will the committee have beyond receiving an annual report? How will the council challenge academy trusts, not just partner with them? Why is there no equality impact assessment, risk assessment or consultation appendix when the strategy is explicitly about deprivation, race, send, free school meals, exclusion and attendance? I support the aim, I do not support the governance model where people with lived experience are outside the room. Partnership without challenge is just networking. Partnership without parents, pupils and communities is not accountability. So I hope you can answer
Well,
some of that.
I don't disagree with you, but local authorities do not run academy trusts. Academy trusts are governed by DFE, national government legislation, and the democratic structures within academies adhere to what it is that comes down from the DFE, not from what local authorities want.
What about what we want from our schools? Where is our voice in any of this? This is very top heavy. And where is our voice?
The academy trusts are run and governed by national legislation,
Yes,
Kerry.
I know that.
Yeah.
But this is about this board. Where is our voice on this board?
Do you want to be on this board?
I would happily
This
be
is
on
about
board.
educational improvement. Did you want to?
I mean, I guess the sort of, I do understand it. I do understand the challenge. I think part of what we're trying to do here, and it is innovative because we are one of the most academised cities in Bristol, so there are very few models, and the government has just said, the government's just come out with a white paper that said it wants all academic schools to be in academy trusts, and it's also said it wants all schools to be in academy trusts working together in a place, but it hasn't given us a sort of legally how does that work, because there's no legislation that requires academy trusts to listen to the local authority. So what we're working on here is persuasion, and you're right, it's about persuasion and influence, and we have very few powers, if any, to require multi-academy trusts, as we know, as Christine just said, to do anything beyond our influence of them as partners. Currently, legally, that's the way the system works. So even if we put in a governance board in place, there's no way we can make it work in that sense. So what we're doing is we're bringing the trust CEOs together with us around the table, because they represent, overall our school's budget is about 500 million in this city. So they represent the use of that resource together. We want to bring them to work together and with us around some series of core priorities. We have all agreed this is the priority as you say, to focus on children living in deprivation across all ethnicities, but particularly white British, is a significant challenge in Bristol. And we're operating on the basis of influence with them. And that's
what's so influential, that the lived experience of the families, parent, carers, children, you know, everybody, communities, where is their voice? That's where the power is. There should be room on this board for people within the community that use those schools. And I can't see any of that in there. It needs to be more community focused. Like I really appreciate the work that's gone into this, but there is no community focus in there. You know, we've got, you know, a massive data set with the Ignite plan, and it's nowhere in there. It's not even mentioned.
So I think sort of part of our role, and it's worth saying the trusts have committed, and again, you know, we might not say this is enough, but they have committed to put some resources into this project, which again is pretty unheard of in my experience, and certainly I've not known it in, you know, in my experience of working across trusts across the southwest. So they are coming together with us, and there's something about how do we create a model which is about understanding what's right for Bristol. In terms of sort of community voice and data led, what you can see in the strategy is it is drawing on a number of conversations across Bristol, including with partners, including with schools. I think part of our role, sitting around the table, is to feed in the sort of conversations we've been having today with parents, with youth sector, with yourselves as elected politicians. It's part of our job is to bring that into the table. But I do understand, and in a way that trust will stay around the table and hear. So, you know, I do
really appreciate all of that, but you know, how often would a CEO of an academy trust sit down with a community group, members of the community, whether they like academies or not, that doesn't matter. It's about the partnership working, because you know we can write reports, and by the time it gets to that CEO, it's clinical, like it's cleansed. You know, it's not our lived experience from us. And that's what we CEOs need to hear.
I don't disagree with you, but the local authority do not have the mechanisms in order to do that.
What, when you're sitting on the board, you can't have community.
This is voluntary. This is a voluntary bringing together of the multi-academy trusts across Bristol, because it wasn't happening. It didn't happen. This is the first attempt to try to bring the leaders of the multi-academy trusts that work across Bristol together. I hear that you are not happy with what's been presented in this particular paper, but what I would throw back to you, Kerry, is without powers, a local authority can't act on. We can't do it. We can't make.
You can't invite members of the community to sit on this board.
Can I answer that? Yeah, in my experience as a local council in Lawrence Hill, nearest one will be the City Academy, and they invited us because there are a lot of issues going there. And the principal and also their board member, they invited local councillors, including Eastern and Lawrence Hill. I couldn't manage to get there, but if you're interested, I will advise you to contact the schools you refer and the principal of the schools. And definitely the CEO and multi-academic trust, they will listen to you.
That's not this board, is it?
I'm not sure. They don't. I think they have like some structure, but the school, they got their own board. If you want to be part of the school board, maybe you can challenge with the issues that you wanted.
I want a community voice in this.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Shall we go and then to?
Mine was only about the SIL money. There was a comment about wanting additional SIL money to be invested in priorities affecting young people, and I was just curious if anyone had any ideas or sort of whether there was any sort of further details to how that was actually going to look.
So no concrete plans at this point, but I have been, in fact I'm meeting the secondary head teacher leaders in South Bristol next week, and we've been talking a lot about some of the challenges around the low attendance, the motion-based school avoidance, and particularly, how those children and young people across all of their schools are struggling in terms of that. And if you look at attendance data across the city, the south wards in Bristol do have some of the lowest, and on average are the area of highest need. So we're having that conversation on Tuesday, and what we're proposing at the moment is how can we potentially develop alternative provision that is run by the secondaries together as a kind of co-commissioned piece of work, where they take a leadership role in almost kind of being the governing body and the commissioner and deliverer of that provision, but we resource them potentially with capital. So at some point I'm hoping that will turn into a proposal that we can bring back. And alongside that, the SEND reforms talk a lot about what's been described as expert at hands, which I'll probably bring in more detail to the June committee. But we're also thinking about how can we co-locate some of the experts into a space like that as well, and what kind of investment might be needed. So we're in a kind of conceptual phase at the moment, but we do think there's a legitimate use of SIL to support education, employment, outcomes. We know that these children are some that don't go on to employment. We'll hear a bit about NEET figures in a moment, but SIL can be used flexibly in that way. And
Is that strategic SIL? Sorry,
strategic SIL.
Okay.
And we think it's a good use of SIL. Obviously, it would need to be looked at in, amongst other priorities within the council, but we do think there's a complementary piece that it can play alongside the Pride in Place programme as well, which is obviously just recently launched. So those are the ideas at the moment. But we're trying to do it with our colleagues in the south, and many of those heads have been. I know one who is from that community, and many have been leading schools in the south for many years and very well.
Yeah, thanks. I've lived in Bristol for nearly 60 years, and Bristol schools have always been underperforming on the national stage in all that time. There was a hope that academies might solve some of these problems, and it doesn't seem that they have, does it?
No.
So I can see that this is an attempt now to kind of to draw those academies together, share best experience, and try and find a solution to this that we haven't found in the past. So I guess my question really would be, I'm sure we've had strategies in the past to address exactly these problems. Do we think we have any more chance of succeeding this time than we have in the past? So that's my question about the strategy. I think what Kerry's talking about is what the schools actually do to try and improve this, that they then share amongst themselves. So that sits beneath the strategy, doesn't it? That's a kind of action plan for what are the things that these schools, the best schools, are doing that they want, that they should be sharing around, and how do we make sure that other schools learn from the best ones? So is there going to be any kind of action plan that sits underneath this that shows what those best practices are that we're trying to get implemented within the school system?
Yeah, of course. There's a few. There is definitely an action plan in terms of a big programme of activity, and in fact, a couple of our colleagues who are part of that team leading that work were here earlier, actually. And there's a number of things, I suppose, in terms of the strategy. We have grouped our schools into families of schools, and that is an opportunity for them to start sharing practice amongst each other. And we know that we do have some very experienced head teachers in our cohort, so this is about breaking them out of their settings, regardless of which trust or whether they're maintained, and starting to think about how they can share practice across settings. We've also taken them on, I think it's 3 or 4 learning visits now in total outside of Bristol, to go and visit schools outside of both Bristol, but also thinking about where we know there is is really good practice, and particularly focused on supporting children who are on free school meals. And that's been good on a number of levels. I think one, to see different practice to that which is in your trust or your school, but also for them to, so what we've been doing with each of those is some reflection opportunities where they can compare and contrast what they are each doing. And a bit like a study group, you know, where they have spent time together thinking about what could work. And that's been attended by multi-academy trust CEOs from within our network, as well as head teachers. So there's a really positive conversation happening about practice, about the different types of practice that can happen within a school, how resources can be deployed differently for different children as well. So I would say it's been, I suppose if we were to measure this on the feedback we've had from colleagues in the sector and head teachers, it's been overwhelmingly positive in that it's a conversation they want to be having. And I think they've quite enjoyed leaving their kind of Academy Trust or maintained badge at the door and just talking about outcomes for children in Bristol. I'd say the other thing worth mentioning is that when it comes to whether it's setting up nurseries on primary school sites, which has been a big programme led by government, or expanding SEND sufficiency, which has come to this committee before, or place planning, which was mentioned earlier, or even post-16, the multi-academy trusts have been, and the CEOs have been integral to all of those conversations, not least because with SEND we need to be able to kind of potentially build on their site. So Elmfield School for the Deaf secondary site will be on the academy site, and that was brokered with the trust. Place planning, the majority of reduction we have seen in places has been in academy trust, not maintained schools, and we have no authority to tell them to, you know, compel them to reduce places. That's been, again, through their positive engagement with us as well. So, you know, and I think they've all welcomed having a conversation about education in Bristol, and certainly we've got their attention, which has been really positive.
In terms of that action plan and the kinds of things that are on it, is that something that the committee can see to understand more about what underpins the strategy? Because I think there are a lot of things that we talk about in education, such as different learning styles and things like that, which we know have, you know, we've failed a lot of children by not giving them a different way of learning from the sort of standard and that kind of thing. And that's the sort of thing I would expect to be seeing in these these conversations that are happening between the best schools and the schools that need to learn. But I wouldn't know whether that is something that's being discussed as part of this unless I could see that, you know, what underpins this strategy in terms of what are the things that are being talked about that can help improve the schools that are failing, and why we think that's going to make a difference.
So yeah, I mean, in answer to that, yes, absolutely, we can share the more detailed action plan, and I'm sure that's not a challenge at all.
I think it's fine. I mean, if I might, I think, you know, in answer to your question about what works and why would this work when everything else, and I recognise, and we've said this a lot, actually across a lot of our services, is we've led each other up the hill before. Why is this time going to be different? I think it's a good challenge, and in a sense, the schools are saying the same about us. And actually, how are we going to help them do their work? You know, there's some brilliant schools in the city, as you said. There's some brilliant practitioners. There's obviously always a mix. So there's something about how can we support them to improve children's outcomes in the best way. And as Vic said, a lot of this is focused on what's the best practice across the country, not just the city. Getting the city to look outwards and being consistent with a plan and with building those relationships. I don't think it's anything more than that, to be honest. I think we should take the challenge about how do we feed in and out of this work. I think that's a good challenge. Equally, these are sectors which have been set up to work separately, as Christian said. They are fractured. So we are working to build trust, and there's probably frustration all round that it's not faster, that it's not more transparent, that it's not, you know, and I think it's a good challenge that we need to continue to reflect on.
Yes, and Susan?
Just quickly, with the theme 5, I thought South Bristol, you're doing the early help pilot. Is that something also you're going to other areas of the city in the future? Thank you.
So yeah, it's very much built on. Sorry, it's very much built on the work we're doing across the city, but wanting to think first about particularly services around schools and what services schools can access. I don't think we're very good, if I'm honest, at sort of making that really clear. Head teachers have said to us this week, haven't they, that we don't really understand how to access different services. That's on us to make things more transparent, just easy to navigate because it's complicated. So that's what we're wanting to do first in the south, but then obviously it's a citywide thing. It's obviously not the most. It's not. There are other needy areas of the city for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take it right back to basics a minute. So, I don't really have a clear understanding of what a multi-agency trust school is in comparison to a school that is local authority led. In terms of what is the purpose. Now for me, I know what an LA school is. An LA school is something that's run by the council gives them money, they employ teachers, etc. The headmaster kind of runs it, and it's all about best possible outcomes for those children. Because that's all we're interested in as local authority. Get kids to school, best achievements, get their outcomes, give them that pastoral support along their way and pop them off to wherever they're going to go with the best thing that we can offer. So what's the difference between what I understand is local authority school and a multi-agency school? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there, because if I don't know how many people out there know. What is the purpose of a multi-academy school? What is their aim? What are they hoping to achieve? And is there what they want to achieve? Does it form from the same basis of what we're doing for our children? How are we setting out best examples? And I know there's different types of multi-academies and all that and stuff like that. But it's like the whole point of an academy that is not local authority. What are the points? What's the point in that? In terms of, are they really out there for the best interests of our children? Are they,
I'm sure every multi-academy trust would say they were. They wouldn't say, no, we don't want the best for our kids. However, the multi-academy trust is looking at just the schools that they run. Local authorities had the responsibility for all children in that area. That is never coming back. And Bristol was one of the, City Academy, 2003. It was number 9 in the country. And that goes back to what Tim was saying about Bristol always having really quite poor education system. We had some schools that apparently did really well, and then there was kind of all the rest of them, right? And one of the reasons why Bristol has become so academised, in my view, is exactly because of that legacy. Fundamentally, though, however, which groups of children from which communities go to which school has not changed. The buildings have, we've had new buildings and it's run by different people. But the issues within the community that create barriers for children still remain. And schools are one of the main sort of mechanisms, I suppose, to try to break those barriers down and provide sort of opportunities for children. But what you've got is a very fragmented system where the multi-academy trust is looking at the multi-academy trust and they're looking at what's going on inside for their children, and it's created a competition that local authority schools, when they were under one local authority umbrella, didn't necessarily have. But it's not going back. Academies are.
I know
it's about how do we work within this
that's what I'm saying
very fragmented system.
We've got this purpose of educating our kids. And the multi-academies and all the rest of it, it's like my belief, what I believed was that the whole point of a multi-academy trust would be that they would do better but I'm not seeing better in terms of educating our kids. Nothing has changed in South Bristol. The deprivation, and all these combined factors that mean our kids aren't achieving. Nothing's changed. The multi-academies haven't changed how our children are growing up and what their achievements are. And when we kind of compare what was education for my parents and education for me and education for my children, what has changed within education, that how much has changed? What has changed? What are we doing? This is what I'm saying. What are we doing to change or buck the trend so that there is better quality education? Because we can't blame the local authority, because the local authority haven't got that insight into what the academies are doing. So what this Bristol Futures is about bringing the academies together, and maybe it's about educating them about what is needed, because they've taken education out of the community. Local authority schools were run and they were community led. You had parent governors and all these things, and they would have activities and barbecues and fun days. Where is all that? Where is it? I can't remember when my kids were at school. They sure as hell didn't have as much fun as I did. So what has changed? How do we change what is wrong?
I mean,
Huge
I could
question.
literally talk for like a week. But I won't. I suppose to get constructive offer is that I do think in this city we need to get to know the people who run our schools. And they need to get to know, the people who run the city. I think we need to, to coin the phrase, bury the hatchet and get on with it. Because, as Christine said, the legislation is not going to go away. 85% of the secondary schools in this country are run by academy trusts. So they run the majority of the schools in this country.
That
So
doesn't
this
stop a board having community members on it. That legislation aside,
And so-
there's nothing stopping you from having members of the community on this board.
So I guess the question is, I think through this programme we should learn how to talk to each other, because I think certainly 2 years ago, when we arrived all of us arrived in post, it didn't feel like there was much of a relationship at all. We are now in a place where we have a better relationship, we have some joint funding, we have a bit of joint governance, recognising it's not perfect. And we need to learn about each other. I mean, we could talk about the evidence base around academies, let's not. But I think that's what we're trying to do is learn about each other.
I'd like to think that this future schools thing is moving us in the right direction, and it may be that we're at the top at the beginning, but I do think I absolutely agree with what Carrie says, because it's all very well, you have like the top, but it needs to be filtered down and it needs to be filtered up. It's a two-way system. You can't just have it going one way all the time, because it's about listening. It's about listening to what people want, what communities want, what children want, and how that is being implemented. And I think as a local authority to put this programme together is great, but where are we going to take it?
The academies are putting this together as much as the authority. We're
Yeah.
one part of what is a number of different academy trusts that are coming together, recognising that there are some really deep and long-standing challenges for communities across the city. We've got decades of entrenched, and there's never been a point where certain communities did as well as others. That I just don't think it's ever happened. I don't think Bristol's ever experienced it. So that is the starting place is quite low, and the system itself is very fragmented. And those two things are both cause and they're correlation, but they're also causes of each other.
Yeah.
But we can only start. we can't stop at schools becoming academies. It's not something that is possible for local authorities to do. If they're in a position where the law says they can become academies and join MATs, they will join MATs. Chief executives that are in Bristol may have an understanding of this the sorts of data that's in this strategy that they've been discussing, but others won't, because they're national trusts. We've got a number of national trusts, and we're asking them to come from wherever they live in the country and come together with other Bristol schools, and that's a big ask, because some of them run 50, 60 more schools across the whole of the country. And we're not in a position to force these people to do this. This is something they're doing because they want to work with each other and the authority to understand, recognise and respond to what it is that our data is showing us. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I think I was also just to say the school improvement work that needs to happen in terms of raising attainment and outcomes isn't just about what academy trusts are doing within their organisations and what head teachers are trying to do within their schools. It's probably a lot about the other things we've been talking about on this agenda today, the youth provision in certain areas where there's deserts of space where there isn't that kind of provision. It's also about us having a really strong SEND system to make sure that's that's supporting and the strong early years and and a strong family help system. So family help's a key part of that, so that there is that bigger early help system. So whilst we're rightly being demanding of the trust to put in resource and focus on the priorities that we have, I think they would rightly be saying to us, well, we also need that support. And then more broadly, we know transport comes up a lot as well as you start to get into post-16. So it's a much bigger. There's a system in terms of the network that we have amongst the leaders who are supporting our schools and leading our schools. They're not separate from their head teachers. That we speak to their head teachers on a daily, weekly basis on a variety of things, and they feed that information through. But it is also incumbent on us to have really strong systems around those schools as well, and those things to work, hand in glove.
I need to leave at 1:30, but obviously we don't have control of the board as a whole, but is it possible to ask what Kerry's suggesting of community reps? Like, they may turn around and say, no, not now, maybe later, but we could ask.
I'm sure we can ask.
Anything else? Okay, so we are asked to note this. Okay, we're asked to note the development of the Bristol Future Strategy, and that this is the draft that's come before us today. Okay, so we are now on. Sorry?
Chris, Duncan.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. So the CYP Policy Committee Work Programme update. Okay, so this is what came out. 12, yeah. So this is what came out of our recent workshop programme setting day. And I'll hand over to Ashley to share what the outcomes were.
Thank you, Chair. This is a short report just for noting to update the committee on the work programme setting workshop that was held in January. The beginning of the report sets out the background and context, and we were all there, so I'm not going to go over that again. Part A sets out the task and finish groups that were identified, and no task and finish groups were identified this year. However, I have mentioned the school's attendance task and finish group as this recently concluded, and the outcome report is due to be brought to committee in June. And then Part B sets out the policy development ideas which were submitted ahead of the workshop by both councillors and officers, and there are, I believe, 19. I'm not going to go through them line by line, but they indicate policy ideas and how they will be brought to committee either through reports or via briefings, and they all tend to have a timeline of 3 to 6 months. An inquiry day was mentioned earlier, and that is in motion, and it's being led by the Public Health and Communities Committee Officer and the ESM, and members of this committee will be able to feed into it. And I'm aware that Councillor Gemfrey had a suggestion of a new task and finish group, so I would take officers' views on that, and then I can take it away and come back to you at the next committee on that.
So just to be clear, the inquiry day is at the play strategy.
Yes,
review.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, the
been led-
motion, yeah.
So it's been led by Peach and James Plaza.
Yes, yeah.
Although, but catches.
Really, yeah,
Yeah,
Cash wants to be
Catches.
involved,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
Rachel and I have been talking about it, but that haven't been, I've not got that message from our conversation, so I'll.
Okay. But well, we'll be invited to
Yes.
participate. won't we?
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions about this?
Yeah, I'm just going to mention item 9 on there, I think would fit in with the task and finish group suggestion, and I think that's something we'd welcome.
Yeah. I think that was actually the spark, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would cover a variety of things, but yeah, it could include recruitment shortages in our care homes, it could include retaining our foster carers, it could include looking at the provision for residential educational provision outside of area, but yeah, I think it would definitely include item 9 about recruitment shortages.
And just to say as well, item 13 on there, from my personal experience in transitioning, not me, one of my children, that's definitely an item that I think I'd welcome being looked at.
Yeah, so we're in the very early stages of bringing those 3 areas together. So over the past year, we've been able to, the CYP area has been able to work a bit more closely with the housing committee in the housing area. So we've got a pathway for sort of youth homelessness that's now gone into some housing. But the adult social care were slightly trailing us in terms of the transformation they needed to do within their own areas of work, but they're now sort of further forward with that, and so they're kind of at a point where they're ready to start sort of engaging and working with sort of a bit more cross-council. But yeah, it's an area of I'm got particular interest in that as well. Okay, so are we able? So this is for noting, basically. Okay. And that takes us on to, so we're back on to item 13, which is the Youth Guarantee and the NEET Reduction Report. So this is an update on the South Bristol Youth Guarantee. It's been running for a year. We've also been notified that we've got another year. And this is for noting, but I'm going to hand over to Jane Taylor, who is the Head of Employment Skills and Lifelong Learning, to speak to the report that she's put before us today.
Thank you very much. I know it's late. So I've been sitting here thinking, what could I say in less than a minute? Well, it's very timely. There is a NEET crisis. There are more NEET young people in the UK today than there were a decade ago. It's nearly 1 million. And Bristol has, today, it's close to 600 young people, 16, 17, who are not in education, training and employment. When we had the opportunity to put forward a strong case for Youth Guarantee, we based it entirely on the data and the intelligence, and also our listening and involving young people from South Bristol. We had a peer research programme led by Robbins, which involved young people who had been NEET from South Bristol interviewing other young people who were NEET. So we knew we were going in the right direction. David picked the ball up when we got the funding, built a strong partnership, a strong team, a board that's been well chaired by Councillor Townsend, and the results are in the paper. But what I wanted to do was to just let David tell you, because we're here in this building, about one young person that has benefited from year 1. And I'd like you to go home just thinking about this young person.
Yeah, so one of the findings from the South West Youth Guarantee is that, again, it's that outreach.
It's that going out in the communities, and when we were at a job fair, there was a lovely fella walking past called Ibs. He was going past with his girlfriend and his new baby. He's a young dad, and everybody loves looking at babies. So straight away, the coaches were over having a chat. They have him and his girlfriend. And at the same time, one of the coaches pulled him aside and kind of told him about the programme and the delivery. And we found out that he was needed at that point, and we're like, well, listen, why don't you come down to have a chat to one of the coaches, see if it's right for you. And he came on board, came down to South Bristol, was speaking to one of the coaches there, and he signed up straight away. He flew through the 4-week employability programme, did his first aid training, really worked intensely with one of the coaches to get under the weeds of what he wanted to do, what his aspirations were. And then off the back of that, he was like, I want to work with young people. He liked what we were doing as a coach, so we reached out to Matt Justice here through Youth Moves, and he did his 2-week work taster here, and at the end of it, they were so impressed with it that he's got a job. So he's starting here. So this is the last impact, so he'll be able to kind of signpost people from this youth zone right into our programme as well. And he was, again, he's got his cousin signed up. So he's been pumping it out and that kind of advocating for us, which has been great. And he came down to the celebration event, so me and Jane had the opportunity, again, meet the kid. It was great. We kept leaving the socks, so we were loving it. But it's that impact when we're thinking about the young people that we're out working with. And again, it was about if they can kind of advocate for us, if we can put the right thing in place for them, like everything you're mentioning there about the need and getting ahead of it and making it enjoyable. Like it's not like school, the programme is really enjoyable, it's very hands-on, and all of the work tasters that we put forward are built from the participants. It's not top-down, it's not you have to go and do this role, it's all built from them. And our placement progression managers do an amazing job reaching out into the community, working with the VCSE, working with employers. They make the work taster as real as possible, and it's led to some great results which we've put in the papers.
So yeah, so the paper is really just asking permission to take up year 2 funding so we can keep going and having these amazing results. So thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Tim?
Yeah, Chair, I think this is a vote because it's
Yes,
two
yes,
votes.
yeah, they didn't say that on the...
Yeah, just check. This clearly is a challenge that, that needs to be worked on. Is this government funding?
Yes, this comes from the Department of Work and Pension. It comes to us via the Mayoral Strategic Authority in the West of England.
Okay, I've certainly got no problem with voting. Take money from anybody.
Kerry and then Susan.
Statistics, sorry, I'm really fatigued. Statistics for my ward are just awful, and as you said, that's been for a long time. I was one of those children, but not at 16. I was not in education and training from the age of 12 till I was 15, and I was allowed to leave school early and go to college. So I had a lot of nothingness. So I hope that's changed for a lot of children. That's before the Education Act and alternative provision. That kind of stuff was only available 30 years ago if you had behavioural issues and you were sent off somewhere else. So I think things have improved a lot in the last 30 years. But yeah, it's just so difficult to keep seeing those statistics from my ward. Young people just not getting the help they need. So I hope things are improving, and it looks like they are.
Yeah, and we put into the paper that we fully understand that the circumstances and the causes of becoming NEET start much younger, and we're now doing some work with young people who are clearly at risk of NEET, and we've got to do more of that, and we're really pushing our combined authority to be investing more in those much younger children, because if we can see the trajectory, we should be intervening.
Postcode should matter about your future.
Absolutely.
So I just want to say, with regards to post-16 education, I think it's phenomenal. I've seen some of your post-16 staff out there engaging with young people in the local area, in Hartcliffe and Withywood, using local community facilities. It'd be nice if they get to come and use the facilities here as well. Look forward to that. I'm sure that will be really good. In terms of, I forgot what I was going to say now. In terms of like with things like the funding and stuff like that and all the rest of it, is to do the youth guarantee and stuff. But one of the things I am most concerned about is the NEET that are NEET because they haven't attained and achieved certain levels of qualifications, especially around maths and English, that will, forever hold them back in terms of employment, further training and activities like that. Because obviously the main thing has always been around sort of like GCSE achievements and stuff. And obviously there was always a little bit of functional skills going on in the city, but there's been a lot of reduction in those functional skills to achieve level 2 in maths and English, especially for people who are post 16. And I don't know.
I'm really glad you brought that up because what's been really impressive is these young people, they are so talented, or they've got such potential, and it would be such a waste. And we're so proud of them because they are the ones who are asking us, with a bit of confidence building, they're asking us for maths and English. And we've been able to use some of those expert community learning tutors who, it's not like school, they take a very, it's a more adult pedagogy, and they're getting some good results. So you're right, it is about making sure those young people get access to the right skills provision at the right time, in the right way, and they will achieve.
And as for post-16 and the functional skills as part of our Boost Your Future programme, this is based in North and South Bristol.
Yeah.
They can achieve their functional skills in English and Maths through that. So we have a 12-week employability and English and Maths course that's set up in Ambitions Lord, of course, yeah. I'm happy to send you across the two pamphlets that's being delivered by Robbins and Bears as the delivery partners. One in South Bristol, and then we're in Lockleys, Ambitions Lord's Weston is where we're at up in North.
Yeah.
So I can tell you all about that.
Okay, thank you.
Grand.
Okay, so thank you, Tim, that we do need to vote on this. So we are asked as a committee to note the content of the report, the information pack, the identified areas to improve services and support for young people most at risk of becoming NEET who are already NEET. And secondly, to authorise the Director of Education and Skills with the Chair of the Children and Young People's Committee to take the steps required to negotiate with the Mayoral Combined Authority to accept and spend the Youth Guarantee Grant funding of 747,557 to deliver the South Bristol Guarantee Programme as outlined in the report, which is basically going into year 2. So can I have a show of hands for those that are supportive of that particular ask?
Seconder.
Oh right, sorry. No, seconder first, please. Okay, Ellie's going to second. Right. Those for the asks of the paper, thank you. Okay, unanimous. Yeah, noting that Andrew's gone home. Okay, thank you. And we are now on our final paper. It's got very quiet in here, hasn't it? Occupational therapy equipment for disabled children. So again, this is, we are required to vote on this. And I'm going to ask Carrie Yates to give us a brief outline.
And I'll be brief.
Okay.
Because I know people have read it, and it's quite a brief report anyway, because it's quite straightforward. So the request is to seek approval to allocate £500,000 of capital funding to support the local authority to fulfil its statutory duty to provide equipment and adaptations for disabled children. So the assessment and provision of equipment for disabled children is a statutory requirement, so we have to do it. Our occupational therapists from the Disabled Children's Service complete assessments, and then they prescribe specialist equipment to meet children's needs in their homes. So that could be a range of things. It could be specialist seating, toileting systems, hoists. equipment to help them go upstairs, that meaning parents don't have to carry them, and basically it enables children to remain living at home safely with additional equipment. So we work with a provider to deliver the equipment. We review regularly on an annual basis to ensure it's still meeting needs and that it remains safe. And currently we're funding through a really small revenue budget of around £53,000. Every year we are overspending by around £100,000. That's been offset so far by a small capital budget that's now run out. So this request is to give us £100,000 per year over the next 5 years to ensure we can continue to meet our statutory requirements. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
No, it's all right.
Quick question.
Yeah.
We spend money adapting homes for children with disabilities. Do we work alongside in this area? Do we work alongside housing for new homes being built? That there are new homes being built to provide homes for the needs of some of these families with specific disabilities, to avoid them struggling in their home.
So we work with housing definitely to look at transfers to different properties if adaptations can't be done in the property the family are living in, and then housing, that will feed into housing's kind of needs assessment of what provision they're providing or planning for in the future.
So you've got that.
Yeah, we've got good links with housing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'm going to go straight to the reading bit then. Thank you. So, we are asked as a committee to, 1, approve a proposal to allocate £500,000 of capital funds for the provision of equipment and adaptation for disabled children, and authorise the Executive Director of Children and Education in consultation with the Chair of the CYP Committee to take the steps required to spend the allocated funding, including the procuring and awarding of contracts as outlined in the report. Can I have a seconder, please? Tim, thank you. And then we're asked to vote, so can we vote in favour? Please raise your hand. Okay, and that's anonymous. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of what has been quite a rather long committee and visit to 224. But thank you for everybody. Thank you to 224 for hosting, and have safe journeys home. Thank you.